And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time, of course, coast to coast, 5:05 Pacific. For me, it's dark outside, it's still bright and early. And we have a great episode for you. I'm going to memorialize the career of retired NYPD cold case Lieutenant Commander Tom Joyce. Joyce is a great friend to the podcast. Always on the chat. We appreciate it. You appreciate all the support, the advice that you give us. Coffee and donuts, Tom Joyce. Absolutely. It's been a hell of a week. Actually, the past couple of weeks, we've been having quite a few lieutenants. It's been an array. It's John, myself, lieutenants. We got Tom Joyce, had Vernon. We have quite a few lieutenants on this podcast. So you know what, Tom, let's get right into it. I love to, introduce yourself, please, and tell us where you grew up, how you grew up, and why you became a cop of the NYPD.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, John. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, fan of the podcast. New media, right? New media. So Tucker Carlson and Matt Taibbi talking the other day about the new media. I love the platform. You guys are doing a great job. So thanks for having me on today. So grew up in Brooklyn. John, I think we have some similar stories. Grew up in Brooklyn, surrounded by the organized crime. Anyone familiar with the Gemini Lounge in Flatlands? Like I had beers in that place, and they're cutting bodies upstairs while I'm having a beer and watching Zeke and the boys play a bit in my friend's father's band. Crazy stuff. I was involved in the auto industry. I went to Vocational Technical High School, Grady. And so I'm a car guy. I'm a motorhead. I ranch all the time. Not so much anymore. But grew up in Brooklyn, Flatbush, Canarsie, and Marine Park, 3 different houses. Marine Park was pretty much the base where we settled in. Public school, junior high school, Marine Park Junior High School, and then vocation. I was kind of screwing up. My father's like, "You're not really doing it, kid." So he got me into Grady without the entrance exam. And then I had one of his buddies was watching over me those 3 years, and I crushed it. I did really good in high school. And then I went to college in my first month. My father died in the first month. So it was really unfortunate. He was a good man. Great dad. He's the kind of, he was getting into fist fights at kids' games before it was cool, So it was awesome. And that kind of set everything on sideways. And then I went to American Airlines. My uncle said, "Hey, come get a union job at American Airlines." So I was humping bags at JFK and Newark and LaGuardia, in the belly of the planes, 150 degrees in the summer, cold as anything in the winter, loading those bags, working hard, grinding. And my buddies called me up one day and go, "Hey, we're going into the city. We're going to file for this exam, the police exam, and then this sanitation exam and the fire department, all the exams." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, guys." And like, "Come on." So we take the police exam, and it was completely on a whim. And I get it. It was in 84, 85-ish. And 40,000 applicants, 40,000 attendees. My list number was 5,302. Got called pretty early. Boom. Within a year and a half, less than 2 years, I was on the job, So January 86, sworn in, 20 years old, not knowing anything about life. How the hell are they going to give me a gun and tell me to, some 47-year-old guy who's struggling and, having fights with his wife, and I'm going to go tell him how life is. It's kind of crazy. But I got selected for transit. I was like, I didn't even know there was a transit police department. All right, that's cool. Subways, fine. Sounds good to me. I'll take it. And I loved it. I loved transit. It was, we looked at each other as like, the stepchildren of the NYPD. We had that chip on our shoulders that we were treated poorly. We would take drugs and guns and contraband into the precinct. They'd make us wait 5 hours before they let us voucher it. Stuff like that. And it was a tight group and was wonderful. I mean, I just had a blast. And then the cat and mouse game of chasing bad guys in the subway. They were pretty much mostly minor crimes, some robberies occasionally, some patterns, and then a couple of homicides, which you wouldn't get into. but all the token suckers and all of the guys breaking into the turnstiles, and it was just a cat and mouse game, and it was just fun, man. And I did that for 3 years on patrol, and I moved into a plainclothes unit that was Brooklyn, Queens only, and then it eventually became citywide, and that was the Bratton era. So Bratton came in 90 and changed everything, and it was like waking a sleeping giant.
Tom, what was that transit? 2 questions for you. What was that transition like for you from being like a neighborhood kid to becoming a police officer? Was there an adjustment period? How was it being a cop, telling your friends in the neighborhood you're a cop? And then my other question is, what unit was that specifically that you're talking about, that one citywide?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it was fine. I don't think there was any rumblings. I mean, the block that I grew up on had a bunch of cops on it and a bunch of firemen. So it was a very civil service-oriented block on Marine Park, East 36th Street, Flatlands to P, for those in the 6th Street. Everyone was civil service or blue-collar workers. So it was fine. Good for you. Good luck. Congratulations. The unit was called the Brooklyn Queens Task Force. It was plainclothes in all of Brooklyn, all of Queens. And then when Bratton came in, he's like, I've got all of these resources in Brooklyn and Queens, and Manhattan's getting their asses handed to them. Like, so I want to be able to move these groups more. So he made it a citywide unit. So letting a Brooklyn cop loose in Midtown Manhattan was also wild. I mean, the robbery crews up and down in this, and then upstairs, top stairs, upside, downside, from 34th and 6th to 34th and 7th to 34th and 8th, just follow them for hours because you knew they were up to no good. And then boom, they'd surround somebody, rob them, and then we'd be right there. You learned how to do stuff like look in a pane glass window of a store, and you look like you're looking in the store, but you're really looking at the reflection behind you and watching these kids. It was so much fun. It's the most fun police work in general across everything we're going to talk about today. It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on, period. End of sentence.
It's true.
I'm still thinking about you with your clothes on. All right.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. But I will say, getting back to the messages we talked about today, I will say it's fun, and it was chasing bad guys, taking bad actors. But I will say for everyone listening, especially the active guys, there's no bigger, more noble profession. There's nothing more expected of you with the least amount of support of any career anywhere. And when you look at what they give you and the tools and the training that they give you, and then the importance of the job, it's not equal. And what I would say is I am so proud to be part of the police group, not only in New York, but in my post-career, I got to meet cops all over the country. They're the most noble, compassionate, caring people, and they get a bad rap, and it's horrible. And the least amount of support, least amount of training, it's terrible. And I love being part of this group.
Tom, it's great hearing you talk, so highly of the police department. Sometimes John and myself, people tell us, "Oh, you guys are so negative," right? And we said, "Well, we're not negative. We're just being critical of this administration because when we compare it to the time we were on the job and we compare it to what you're talking about, we love the job. We loved what it was. We want it to be something that we love again. And it's unfortunate, but it's hard to do when this administration just completely brought this police department to peril." So, Tom, I just want to ask you, right? So you're knocking around, same thing, 2 questions, right? You're knocking around, you take the NYPD test with other friends. So did any of those friends also get on the job with you? Did any of those friends, or was it just you? And tell us about that experience being under the transit police department versus being NYPD. How did you feel having a transit patch? At this point, they haven't merged yet. You're part of transit. So how did that feel being part of the New York City Transit Police Department?
Yeah, one of those guys did become a cop, and then one did like many, many years later. He pushed it off and came on later. And we had separated by then. We had run into each other from time to time, but we went in different directions. I went to transit, he went to Brooklyn South. And then and the second one wound up in Staten Island. John, we'll talk offline. Maybe you know him at some point. Yeah, those friends, that was it. There was 4 of us that went and did that. And one, I just he became a mechanic in the transit authority, and I went back to Brooklyn in December, and we had dinner, so it was good to catch up. So 40 years later, I was like, "Hey, remember we took the test?" He's like, "Yeah, maybe I should have took the job." I said, "You did all right at the MTA." So transit, like I said, Eric, we wore it as a badge of honor to be like treated not the same, and we had that chip on our shoulder. But at the end of the day, when the work needed to be done, we got along. Just like the way the cops and the firemen kind of had their rivalry, it was really the upper echelon that had the problems. We would tease each other, we would razz each other, we would break shoes on each other. But at the end of the day, when the job had to get done, it got done. You know. And so, same thing with transit. We had some task forces. I wound up locking up a fare beat, and I can talk about fare beats. So that is like you catch the big fish in fare beating, like no doubt about it. And we caught up a murderer, a kid who was involved in a murder in PSA 3 in housing, in the Ingersoll houses. And you know what they did? We got the kid. We built a relationship with him. We debriefed him. He started talking. I called up the detectives, Brooklyn North Homicide. I called up PSA 3. At the time, it was still housing police. And they detached us for a week and said, stay with us, work this kid with us. It was like, I was an anti-crime cop with 4.5 years on a job. I thought I hit pay dirt. Like, this is phenomenal. And they really exposed me to like the investigative process. And I was like, I'm in love with that. And we'll get into that some more. I got some cases. Everyone on here can Google. I mean, there's the cases are wild. I mean, just wild.
So Tom, obviously you become a sergeant at some point because you retired a lieutenant. What made you decide to go to the boss route, and what were you doing prior to becoming a boss?
It's a great question. It's a great question. You know why it's a great question? Because at the time, I'd already taken a sergeant's test. And for all those who remember, the transit police had a cheating scandal. And with the proposed answer key, I crushed it. I freaking crushed it. And then
I think there was a cheating scam. I think there was a mayor involved in that cheating scam.
There might have been a mayor involved.
I think we know his John. I think we know his name too.
And it's definitely not de Blasio. So I'll give you a hint. I'll just give you his initials, Eric Adams. So
is it right with Adams?
Yeah, and this guy Mike Gordon, and it was really depressing because we all worked so hard. And then you know what was really fascinating about it? All the guys who said, shoot, I missed it. I missed the opportunity. They all studied the second time around when they didn't study the first time around. And so the pack got tighter. And I'm like, God damn. So what happened in the interim of the first test to the second test is like, I don't even know how this is going to work out. I got to put myself into the career path.
Wait, time out though. You passed the test and they didn't let you, and they scrapped the test?
They threw the whole test out, scrapped the whole test.
That's wrong, bro.
Dude, I got like it was 100 question, multiple choice, in basket, all that shit. I think I got 2 wrong on the proposed key. So there might be some adjustments, but I'm thinking the most I got is 3 or 4 wrong, which would have put me in the top tier. The second exam, which is just about a year later, a little over a year later, I did well again, but again, that pack was tighter, and I wound up being number 123 out of 600, I think, or something like that.
What year was that, Tom?
So 90, 91.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had 4 years on a job. You know, I would have been a young sergeant, but you know, that's the timing. You take advantage of what's in front of you. You don't say, hey, but there was a sergeant's test in 87 so it's 91. So it was 4 years later. So it was 91. There was a sergeant's test in 87 that I could have took. I was eligible. And a good friend of mine, Mike Coughlin, like literally aced it. And on his 3rd year anniversary became a sergeant. And he was the sweetest, nicest guy. And he was a good boss, but like, damn, bro, like you don't even know how to be a cop yet, you know? But he was a good egg. He was a good guy for sure. So yeah, 91 and then pushed it to 92. So in that gap, I'm like, I can't count on anything. And this is what my message to the troops is bet on yourself, live deliberately. You own your own destiny and you take advantage of it. And, you know, the comments yesterday with the nepotism session is like, everybody knows everybody. I came on the job with 0. In fact, I had an uncle who was in communications. I called him up. He told me to pound sand. He goes, I'm not going to do anything for you. And I was like, oh, okay. That's cool.
He wanted you to make your own bones.
I think part of that was true. I think the other part was like, you went to transit. I can't help you over there. So,
okay.
But yeah, and so when we're now in this career path situation, and every single person that I ever worked for, and you'll hear how it plays out, it's like, no, you're doing the job. And Comstat really was a big deal, and we'll get into that because it's pretty wild stuff. But I had to put myself in a career path because, again, I need to make sure I have options, right? And I figured if I'll put myself in a career path, and once I'm in, if I have to go to detective route, I'll go to detective route. But I'm taking this test again, and I'm going to do well on it again. So don't you know, I get into the career path, and everybody I get in with, the day they call me for sergeant is the day my group gets promoted to detective. So I never had the shield. And I called up, and I swear I did this. I called up and I go, is there any chance I could walk on stage with detectives first, come off and get back up and go back for sergeant? Just give it to me for an hour. And just even make it symbolic. Don't even like do a personnel order or anything. And they're like, are you out of your mind? I was like, you know how important it was for me? Like, it's just a morale thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, those detectives that
nice. I mean, you earned it. You earned the shield. You should have got promoted.
Pictures for your family.
That's all right. I get it.
I would have deferred it. I would have deferred it. But you would have, top pay sergeant.
Yeah. So that's the route I took. So I wound up becoming transit. I go to District 2 in Lower Manhattan. It's 34th Street, river to river, south. Great time. A lot of good stuff there. And that's when the merge happened. But, we're just doing our transit thing. And Bratton had already left, got new chiefs. And then Bratton becomes the police commissioner in New York, and then he works for the merge. And that's my son. The day I got promoted to sergeant, that's my son Tommy, who's a Metro DC cop now. That's me and Howard Safer. And then my son and I threw the bag on 5.5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. I got to pin the kid in DC. So yeah.
That's a great pick,
cool
Tom. That's a great
thanks.
pick. That's beautiful. So speaking of Tom, I mean, it's fascinating. So before I go into the question, what year was the actual merge? I think it was 95, right?
95, April 95, April 1st, 95.
So when you're on the job, I mean, you're there you pretty much get on and then segue into the height of corruption around the Michael Dowd case. Now, it's a separate police department at that time, but 92 was the commission. So what was it like being a transit cop at that point and the height of this corruption with the NYPD? Did you guys feel it in transit? Did it affect you at all? I see you smile. I'm curious. What was it like at that time? Because that's the height of the Michael Dowd era.
Yeah, not really. It didn't really trickle to us. We heard about it. Thought it was screwed up and crazy. Side story, I knew Michael Dowd as a kid. A kid on my block was his cousin. We lived in Brooklyn. He lived on Long Island. His father had a Corvette. And we thought it was like, oh my God, this guy's got a Corvette. John, when's your son coming? Is he ever bringing your uncle coming? Is he ever bringing a Corvette? So I knew the kid. Honestly, I wasn't surprised.
Well, that's what I always said, Campese was trying to sell it like, oh, they gave him a free cup of coffee. And then next thing you know, he was, and I'm like, I don't know. I kind of think he slipped through the cracks and that's the way he was, I wasn't buying that story. So you make sergeant, Tom. What was that transition like for you? Sergeant to cop. Still a young guy, pretty young on the job at that point.
Yeah, I had 7 years on. I felt good in terms of knowing the job and in transit, knowing how transit worked. That part of that career path was working for Jack Maple in the Central Robbery Unit and the decoy squad. And so I got to watch who I believe is the greatest law enforcement mind that has ever lived in the United States. I fully believe that. He was crazy. He was eccentric. You can say all the things you want to say about him, but the man was brilliant. He was doing an 85 and 86 in his robbery meetings with butcher paper as a map around the wall and drawing out each train station. He was doing mapping and crime analysis before anyone even knew what it was. That guy walks on water as far as I'm concerned as a police strategist, hands down. No, not even close.
Yeah, and now Eric Adams compares him to Cass Daughtry.
I'm going to say that's not an appropriate assessment.
You got any Jack Maple stories for us?
I don't have I was removed from him by that time. He was pretty much of a big shot, so I didn't get a lot of interactions with him. A couple, phone calls and a couple of interactions, but no real like, holy cow, like this guy. I wish I did, but I didn't. Yeah, so the decoy squad and central robbery, that unit was so much fun. Like, again, more fun than you can ever have, could ever imagine. Being undercover, not the traditional undercover sense, but just plain clothes as a subject. You have your ghost, and then you have no gun, no shield on you, and all of this stuff is happening, and you're sitting there, and the guy's about to rob you. It was wild. And then I wasn't a good decoy because I'm larger, and they wouldn't mess with me. So I was much better as just a backup team. And they did it really well. This was the second version of decoys. The first version that Maple led was kind of wild and loose, and they learned. And there's some allegations of, pushing the envelope with you, if you will. No one ever got arrested, so I don't think they're charged. They just said you got to tighten it up a little bit, a little more management, a little more oversight. Like, they used to go out on decoys. If there wasn't a sergeant available, they would do a decoy operation without a sergeant. They stopped that. They said that they were trying to tip the hands of the perpetrators and entrap them. So instead of dressing down like thugs, we dressed up like suits and ties, right? Because like, no way you think, like, you're not going to listen to the white guy with a suit and tie and say, go rob that guy. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense, So they revamped the decoy squad. So I was in the second version of the decoys.
I love hearing you talk about police work. I could feel it right now, like how excited by it at the time you were doing it. You were doing intrusive police work. That's the bedrock and the foundation for public safety, doing intrusive police work. So as a sergeant, what were some of your leadership principles that you learned along the way? Because my passion, I always talk about it, is being self-read on leadership. I went to, officer school in the Marine Corps, learned about leadership, but really a lot of the leadership I learned is by reading different leadership books, because I believe it's a skill that you learn. So what were some of the skills you learned being in a position of leadership? And, what were your leadership principles?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Eric. I don't think transit, and I'm not sure what NYPD's BMOC was like. I don't think they did a good job of telling us how to become a good leader. I only remember them saying, if the guys do anything wrong, jam them up. And what I realized was like, hey, I think I need to be half supervisor, half delegate, right? I need to look out for them, make sure they don't get into trouble. I think, John, you have a very similar styles. Like, no, I need to protect you guys from yourself. And because I know that if you don't have good, strong supervision and the ability to make a decision, right? Like, the worst thing is like, I'm going to make decision A or decision B. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision at all. Like, maybe the cops don't agree with the decision B and they all want to do A and I'm going to go with B for my reason, but at least make a decision. And all I ever heard was that guy's shaky. Oh, he's a shake box. I was like, that's who I do not want to be. And I learned more how to be a sergeant by emulating the sergeants that I wanted to copy and follow than I did any other way. So I hope that my troops, wherever they are right now, floating around. And I'm going to tell you a wild story about being a supervisor of Tony Trotman. And for anyone who knows about Tony Trotman, he was arrested, corrupt, robbery gang. You can Google it. It's a wild story. And it showed that the kind of boss that I was, and when I tell you the story. But I hope, like I said, I hope they realized that I made a decision. It wasn't always the decision they wanted, and I looked out for them. I never gave a CD. Actually, I gave one, and it was a really close friend of my detective because he straight out lied to me. And that's another story. But any other than that, I never, ever, ever, ever gave a CD. I always felt like we can fix the behavior between you and me.
So you stay in transit as a sergeant. So what do you do as a sergeant there and lead us up into you being a lieutenant? Like, how do you get into investigative work again as a sergeant?
Yep.
Do you go back to the decoy squad? Like, what happens there?
Yeah, so I'm in District 2. I'm in uniform, 3rd platoon. Then I move over to an anti-crime unit. Running around Manhattan in plain clothes is great. A lot of fun, chasing bad guys, putting handcuffs on bad actors. A lot of fun. The merge happens, and there's a unit, the disorder control unit, at the time run by a Lieutenant Tom Graham. He eventually retired as a chief. He's since passed away, so rest in peace, Tom Graham. This was an anemone Louis Anemone project. Disorder control, probably one of my definitely my favorite chief. Between him, Dunn, and Espo were just phenomenal. Great leaders. You do not mess around with those guys. You knew who was in charge with those guys. And so Anemone's running his disorder control unit, and he decides the cops aren't being trained as good as they should be for their own tactical sense of safety and for how to handle situations. So they developed this program called Top Cops, and it's facilitators, not instructors, and the facilitator gets the attendees and he just moderates the conversation. So you run a real life scenario, you act it out. We have true actors, road cops who were on patrol. They did not take any people from inside jobs or anything. I mean, everyone that I went to in this Top Cops training, I was like, one guy's better than the next. One gal's better than the next. There was a woman, Laura DiNapoli. She was Midtown North Cop. Oh my God. Like, she was phenomenal. Right. And so I'm like, oh, this is great. So me and Barry and Brosnan, we called them the Killer Bees in District 2. They were the guys who answered every radio run on the job. Like, we would never go into backlog if the bees are working. Like, they handle everything and they were great. And so we get sent. We're the very first transit group to go through Top Cops training. And we go there, and because I had great cops with me, we crushed it. And they come up to us and they go, we have NYPD guys coming through here and they're complete disasters. And the first transit group comes in here and does a great job. They literally did a telephone message and we were assigned there the next day. Because they said, we need transit representation here because we're cycling all the transit guys through. So that was a 6-month detachment. Went back to command. It was great. Long story on that. On how that all worked out. Eventually went to borough-based training and they disassembled it and broke it apart and lost it. But, you know, there's a cost factor. That training was very, very expensive. But if we're talking about saving lives and making good decisions, both of the civilians and of the cops, like, what's too expensive? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Whatever. Again, you can't fix the job, guys. You can only handle the thing right in front of you at the time. You can't fix that city. You can't fix the job. Just handle the job right in front of you. Do the best job you can.
It's obvious. It's obvious you're doing some real police work in your career. I just got to say, it's obviously doing real police work. You're moving around a lot. Got a lot of experience.
It's just all you have to, like. I'm not the best cop by a long shot. I mean, I am humbled by the quality and the level of some of the policemen and the policewomen that I've met on this job. I mean, for sure. But I gave them an honest day's hard work. You know, I came in, I wasn't going to screw around. I didn't coop at night in transit. Like, you had these guys who used to sleep for they'd roll out and in 15 minutes they'd be in some room sleeping. I stood tall every night, froze my ass off. I was just that kind of guy. One, because I had a sense of responsibility, and two is because I was a little bit of a coward. I didn't want to get jammed up and get in trouble. So it was kind of a little bit of a mix, you know. But I go back to District 2, and by the time I get back, there's an NYPD police captain by the name of Steve Powers, great guy, wonderful. And he's like, you should go to this Brooklyn North SATCOM thing, which I definitely want to talk about SATCOM. You guys familiar with SATCOM? Brooklyn North? The best thing that ever happened to the job. I know.
It's funny. I never hear the middle ground. Some people say it's the best, and some people say it's the worst. So it's interesting to hear you say it's the best.
Well, it's got pros and cons for sure. However,
could you just break it down for the young guys? Like, what was SATCOM? Like, why'd they do that, and like what it was?
Yeah. So let me give you a little bit of history, and I'll go right into SATCOM. So Steve Powers says to me, they're forming up a big narcotics push. It's called Operation Juggernaut, which was a publicity nightmare. So Bratton took a beating on that one. Like, Juggernaut, oh, you're going to come in and raid Brooklyn, you know? And so they said they changed the name and then they called it. There's Steve Powers, great guy.
He wasn't loved. I'll tell you.
He turns around. He gets me into narcotics. Right now, here's like what you talk about nepotism. This guy sent me to narcotics. He didn't like bring me. He's like, no, you'll do a great job over there. Like, go there. Make your bones in Brooklyn North Narcotics. You got to get out of this transit thing. You know, it's not a dead end job, but you got more in you to go do. So go over there. So I go to Brooklyn North Narcotics, and I get sent to an assignment, and it's this new structure. Now I'll get into the SATCOM thing. So SATCOM is short for Strategic and Tactical Command. And the difference between the rest of the job is they took this pilot program, Brooklyn Borough North, the borough of Brooklyn North, and they made it a single leader. Uniform patrol, 2-star chief will have an XO, and then he'll have a head of detectives and a head of narcotics, and then he'll have his borough commander and his zone commanders, and then he'll have his precinct commanders. And everybody rolls up to one single boss. So none of this silo matrix organization nonsense where, the squad wants to do this and the bureau wants to do this and OCCB wants to do this. No, one chief. One chief. And Joe Dunn was that chief. And boy, oh boy, Espo was the XO. And you want to talk about great leadership? I royally screwed up on a narcotics warrant. We had a Hasidic Jew on Eastern Parkway buy heroin. We flip him. He swears out 2 warrants, and both warrants go bad. I don't gonna get into the details, but they could have sent me back to command, no meal, 100%. I get called in. I had to write a 49. I explained.
Did you guys hit the wrong door? What happened?
What's that?
You hit the wrong door?
2 wrong doors. One wrong door. One was no product. So, and it was because we didn't do the person who did the eyeballs on the door, and we were supposed to mark the door. They went to the wrong floor and marked the wrong door. So it's really wild, and it was bad. But we apologized. We admitted our mistakes. We jumped on the sword. But if you looked at how everything played out, it was really, and I had to write a 49. I had to bring, the captain came with me, Patty Boyle, who also passed away. He was a great guy. Patty Boyle and I had to go before Dunn and Espo. Espo's taking calls from a councilman. I won't say his name. And he's like, I want their heads. And he's like, let me get the story first. And I lay it all out. And so the wrong door was an honest mistake because it's the way they labeled the first floor, second floor. Like the second floor was actually 1 because the lobby didn't count as a floor.
Gotcha.
And then the second one, our map was identical to the house. So we know our informant was inside the house. And there was a cabinet where the kilo of heroin was supposed to be in there. And there was wires for how it was entrapped. But the product wasn't there. So we think it got, moved. They listened to my story. And Espo and Dunn says to me, son, you struck out today. You struck out swinging, but you can't hit home runs if you don't step to the plate. I don't want you to stop doing what you're doing, but I need you to do better. And Espo got on the phone with the councilman right in front of me and said, we've got this handled. And that was it.
I mean,
so
that's what we expect from your leadership, right? To support you, to back you, to teach you, to mentor you. That's good leadership. And that's why these guys are here.
Yeah. At that point, I'd do anything for those guys. Anything, anytime, anywhere. Yeah, they really, and every boss I had, Joe Canine he was eventually the borough commander. He followed, but he was our chief of, he was in charge. He was inspector of the squad and narcotics. They all worked up. Like it was all, everyone stayed. Once you were in SATCOM for those 10 years, everyone stayed in there. Nobody went outside the borough. Like everybody was homegrown inside the borough. And so I really enjoyed answering to one boss because it was a unified mission. And I now work in the private sector, and these distinct functional areas are dysfunctional. They're not functional. They're dysfunctional because they answer to a different boss and they have their own interests and not the common goal and common mission. And so that's why I think SATCOM worked. And a lot of people will say, it sucked, it was horrible. God forbid some detective had to answer to some uniformed chief who's never in the bureau. Like that doesn't make any sense. These guys are listening. And then you're telling your story. You're telling them what's going on in the investigation. They have common sense. They know what's going on. Like they don't know the ins and outs and the intricacies of the detective process, the criminal investigative process, and they don't know the intimate conversations you're having with the prosecutor to bring these major cases and sensational cases to a successful conclusion. But they know when you're blowing smoke or not. So they empower you. Go get it done. And we did. I mean, I loved Brooklyn North SATCOM. I loved it, man.
I like the way you lay it out, because we hear about SATCOM. SATCOM is considered this, an old portion of the job, right? And a lot of people talk about it. I hear people that love it and people that hear it, that hate it. Shout out to Rob Lukash. Great comment here. Let me see if I can get it back here. Taking ownership of a mistake is the highest level of leadership. Learn and move forward. That's the thing, right? Move swiftly, move fastly. Something I learned from Colin Powell's book, right? You got to discipline should be immediate, whether it's just a verbal talking. But this is great. You're moving on in your career. You're doing a lot of stuff. It's intrusive. Eventually you're working in cold case. But before that, tell us about the transition now, right? You learn all this leadership skills. Tell us about the transition from sergeant to lieutenant. And where do you initially get assigned as lieutenant? Obviously, that could be a lieutenant commander. Where do you go as lieutenant?
Oh, we got to back up a little bit. I got to tell you how I get into the squad first.
I get into the squad as a sergeant.
I get into the squad as a sergeant. And again, this is the Brooklyn North situation. So timing is not everything, but man, timing really affects people's careers. So I go to Brooklyn North and I'm doing this warrant and I'm in that stuff. But what I didn't tell you was I was actually assigned to the 7-7 Precinct Detective Squad. And I'll tell you why. They open up we originally started Brooklyn North Narcotics at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And that place was condemned by OSHA for like 5 years and we were still there, right? And it was the most hideous, horrible facilities ever. John, like, where were you? We needed the facilities fixed, And they finally get us over to Glenmore. And they put us in Glenmore in the 7375 area, right? I go on vacation. And I come back and they're like, hey, sorry, buddy, there's 8 sergeants in the 7-7 module. I mean, they had 7 or 8 modules just in the 7-7 alone. And depending on like the 9-4 might have had 3, but the 7-5 might have had 10. I mean, it was a juggernaut, but they just couldn't call it juggernaut, right? I mean, we locked up everybody for drugs, man. So I go, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm assigned to the 7-7 squad? Like, I wasn't here. I was on vacation. Yeah, well, you weren't here, so you got it. I'm like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to stay here in narcotics. I get to the squad, and I was like, well, listen, I'm working out of the squad because they're running out of room at Glenmore. I can't take undercovers over here. They're like, yeah, you know what? If you need undercovers, borrow them and just work with your 6 investigators and then work with the squad. So I go into the 7-7 squad, and the zone captain who had the 7-7-7-9 was a guy named, at the time, Captain Charlie Wells. And Charlie Wells is a legend. A legend. He was a Vietnam veteran, successful. He had a shooting in Midtown Manhattan on a hostage situation as a captain. He was a lieutenant in intel. He was a bomb squad guy. I mean, the guy's the best. Everything that you would ever want to know about how to run a criminal case is Charlie Wells. Now, I've learned a lot from a lot of other people, but I would say him more than anybody else. He was a quiet guy who would sit there, never raised his voice. You knew that guy was in charge. Really, really the best. And I talked to him recently too. It's good to know that he's still doing well. Anyway, we're responding to each shooting and each homicide, and we're going and doing basically what it's a glorified narcotics. It's really just SNU, but out of narcotics. And we're pulling in witness after people giving information on the shootings, giving information on the homicides. We're locking people up, debriefing them, giving information to the squad. And 6 months later, they're like, you guys are really good. We really appreciate it, and we're helping. They bring the unit back to Glenmore, some movement. They take us back out of the squad, and Charlie Wells says, no, I want Tommy to stay here. We have an opening in the squad. Calls up Chief Bill Taylor, and none of the bureaucracy would have taken me to go from narcotics to the bureau. it was done in 1 day. And they reassigned me to the squad. So for the 6 months that I was working with them, I learned a lot, but not everything. And then there's another sergeant that worked in the squad. His name was Tom Kumi. Like, he's like, I got you. You just follow me, and I'll teach you how to be a squad sergeant. And again, once again, get out of their way. Let the detectives do their thing. Just don't let them do stuff that's going to hurt the squad, hurt the case. That's all you have to do. And the detectives there were phenomenal. I mean, just impressive every day. Did 2 years there and then got promoted to lieutenant. And then Mike Gabriel was the CO of the 7-7 precinct. And he goes, hey, you're getting promoted to lieutenant? And this kind of sounds similar to a story you were telling, John. He's like, oh, come here. And I go, look, I'm going back to the bureau, bro. Like, don't even. He goes, I'll take you for 6 months. I'll just take you for 6 months. And Kelleher wouldn't let me go back to the bureau. He was the first det. He's like, no, you got to do 6 months on patrol. And everybody in Brooklyn North was going crazy, going like, why don't you just let the guy go back to the squad? Like, he's got to do 6 months back in uniform. So I literally moved my locker from upstairs as a sergeant in the squad to the lieutenant's locker room on the first floor in the 7-7 and sat on the desk for 6 months. And then moved my locker back up. Well, actually, I went over to 7-9, but like I went back to squad 6 months later. And Mike Gabriel was like, I just need you for 6 months. Like, I need some stability on my platoon commanders, you know? And so that's how that worked out. I got to tell you a funny story about management and supervision. So there's a guy by the name of David Joseph, who was a cop in narcotics at this time, who faked his own shooting. Are you guys familiar with this? Where he said he was sniped. He was on a payphone. So when
I don't know the story either.
Yeah. So David Joseph is a former housing cop. He's a detective in Queens, narcotics, and they scholarship him to Brooklyn North. And because he was like, they were saying, you got to add some experienced detectives to the Brooklyn North narcotics operation. So who do you send, right? One guy, Billy, I forgot his last name, Billy, comes up to me and goes, honestly, Sarge, he goes, they're sending me here because I screwed up, and I'm going to work my way back to Queens. I'm going to be a great narco guy for you, but I got to get back to Queens. I screwed up. I own it. The other guy comes, he goes, they're jealous of me. Dave Joseph says, they're jealous of me. That's why
I know a few people like that.
I already know what's coming on, right? I already know what's coming.
I found the article on it. It was August 1996. Detective shot 3 times by sniper, saved by bulletproof vest. Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Dave Joseph.
Yeah.
So he's working for me, and we're driving around 7-3. I'm on Mother Gaston Boulevard. I'll never forget it. I'm driving a Chrysler Concorde, like one of those rental vehicles. And he says to me, hey, Sarge, you know, I've been involved in 2 shootings. I was like, yeah. He goes, you ride along enough with me, we're going to get into a shooting. I tend to find guns. I go, brother, the last thing I want to do on this job is get involved in a shooting. Let me make that perfectly clear. So we're going to be tactically sound and we're going to be smart, but we're going to avoid a shooting. If we got to do what we got to do, we do. But that's not what I'm interested in, bro. And it's like, I had to make that really clear. They broke up our teams and they said, this guy did this 2 weeks after he was out from under my assignment. He went to the woods in upstate New York, put 3 rounds into a bulletproof vest, put it on him, and got on the payphone in the 7-3. And everyone, and it was in the summer, and all the windows were closed, and the air conditioning was on, and the windows are closed, and the radio was on, and it was beepers before cell phones. He goes, oh, I just got a beep. Pull over to that payphone. And he pulls over to the payphone, he gets out, and then he crunches down, and he goes, I just got shot. And it was all fictitious. So this is my world, right? So now, remember this name. One of my investigators in this narcotics team is Dave Joseph. The other one is Tony Trotman. Anthony Trotman, who was eventually arrested as part of a robbery crew and corruption, and he tried to hire a hitman to kill a detective. He was also on my team. And I'll tell you, as I'm a lieutenant years later, how that unfolds.
Hell of a team.
Bro. But at the time, we were high performing. The answer to Tony Trotman is that he was a great cop at the time and he went sideways for some other reason, which I'll talk about. So I'm done with this, and I make lieutenant, go to uniform. And now here's the funny story. I'm on the desk every single day in the 7-7, 4 to 12. And John McGee is a sergeant, great investigator, great sergeant in the squad in the 7-9. I got another guy in this. The two commands that were open that needed squad commanders were the 7-9 and the 7-3. And for that 6 months, everyone's calling, Tommy, where do you think you're going? You go 7-9, you go 7-3, 7-9, 7-3. I go, I don't know, wherever the boss wants me. I don't care. I just want to get back to the bureau. And John McGee is calling me from the 7-9. He's like, Tommy, come here. Come to the 7-9. Tell him you want the 7-9. It's great. We love it here. It's the best. We got the best team. Everything's great. I go, John, I'm going to do whatever the boss wants. If he wants me in the 7-3, it's a 7-3. If he wants me in the 7-9, it's the 9. I don't care. I'm just going to get back. Every day, this guy calls me. You on the desk? Yeah, get over here. Come on, 7-9. When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? I get the call. Chief Kaneen calls me up. He says, come to the office. We're going to put you back in the squad. You're free and clear of your uniform assignment. He goes, I'm looking at the board. The 7-9 is getting crushed. I need you in the 7-9 to get a lid on things right away. The 7-3 has been quiet. So both are open, they're both busy places, but the 7-9 is off the hook right now. I'm going to send you 7-9. I go, okay, great. I leave Brooklyn 179 Wilson, the SATCOM command. I drive over to 7-9. I show up. I see John McGee. I go, John, I'm here, baby. I got it. He goes, thank God. This freaking place sucks so bad. And I go, John, you've been telling me for 6 months it's great. He goes, I'm miserable here, bro. I can't be miserable alone. I need somebody. I was like, John, what are you doing to me? And he's like, I'm telling you, Tommy, this place is horrible. And if you look back, there were 9 squad commanders in 9 years in the 7-9. They cycled squad commanders one after another. The place was such a beast. Kaneen told me, he goes, you need to go there, you need to get the clearance rate up, and you need to get the quality assurance. They've never passed a quality assurance inspection, ever.
Was it the workload or was it the detectives that were working there?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. That place was so bad, and this is 99 now. So 92 was its heyday. 92, they had 79, 7979. That's why I remember it super easy. 7-9 homicides in 1 square mile in the 7-9 in 1992. This I'm going to start a little controversy over here. The 7-5 guys, they get 10 pounds of muscle as soon as they get out of the academy, go to 7-5, 7 square miles, 100, 110, 120 murders. 1 square mile, 79 murders. I would say pound for pound, the 7-9, 4-4, 4-6, 7-3, 7-5, those 5, you could talk about those at that time. Like it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, like we can arm wrestle all day about which one was worse, but that 7-9 was a beast. And so the workload was terrible. From 99 to 04, when it was slowing down and we were getting a good handle on robbery, on crime, I averaged in those 5 years, 1,565 days I spent in that office. We averaged 30 murders, 100 non-fatal shootings, and 5,000 criminal investigations for those 5 years. And that was when it was slower than 92. And I had 32 detectives between the robbery unit. That's why I heard yesterday someone said the Bram. I thought it was really funny. It was the RIP, then it was the Ram, then it was the Bram. So I had a sergeant in the RIP, and I had 2 or 3 sergeants at some times in the squad, and I had about 30 detectives total. And so a good friend of mine, George Farback, detective there, at my retirement party, he paid me a compliment. He said, you may have been my favorite squad commander, or maybe the second favorite, but the one thing you did better than anybody was you had a finger on the pipeline of who was coming into the squad. Like I would not, like if they would send me somebody, and SATCOM allowed for a lot of that. Like Who in narcotics wants to come to the squad? Who in the patrol wants to come to the squad? SATCOM had a lot more streamlined process and influence over those things than the bureaucracy of the rest of the job. And it was like a little mini police department inside the bigger police department. And so I was able from May 1999 till, and I call it the September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, because 2001, I would say that squad was the best squad in the city at that time. It's mine. Someone can argue another one. These men and women were phenomenal. I was amazed by watching them do what they did every day. They were magical. The stuff that they did, the cases that they pulled, and we'll go through some of the cases. Cash Money Brothers, copy of New Jack City, Lafayette Gardens, Damian Hardy, aka World, Little Kim's boyfriend. His entire violence spree was in the 7-9. We ate all that thing. And kudos to Detective Mike Prate, first grader, retired. Takes down that case with Jimmy Glynn of the FBI and Tony Salisbury, who's now the national advisor to the president of the United States of America and HSI at the time. They took down that case. It took 10 years. They took down that case and they were finally sentenced in May of 2015. But we couldn't put those cases together because nobody cooperated. It was just a violent drug crew. They had to do a federal case. There's no way you could do a state case with these guys.
Hey, Tom, could you a lot of our friends and listeners are active retired, but we also have a lot of civilians, also family cops. Could you tell them about that? You have the squad, you talk about the best men and women you had, and I love the way you speak about them. And you talk about you handpicked and selected them when they got to the squad. Can you tell us, were you part of the interview process, and what were the qualities that you looked for to be a good detective in your squad?
So I hire, and I learned this later, but I didn't understand it. You never really know if you're a good candidate for a job until you do the job, right? Like, and then we follow the Peter principle. We've talked about that. You keep promoting up until a level of incompetency, right? And so I don't know that a good narcotics detective is going to make a good squad detective. I don't know that a great anti-crime cop is going to make a good, but do I have a person who is committed and passionate and can be part of the culture that we want to bring to the office? And then will you commit to learning the job and doing the best that you can? Yeah, that's what so I don't know if he's going to be a great squad detective and coming out anti-crime or narco, right? I just know that he's like part of a culture that's like, no, I'll tell you this, the squad guys, they played hard, but man, when that bell rung, boy, did they work hard. I mean, so, the squad had a lot of flexibility. I always told another secret for kids on the job, get an assignment that it gives you the most geography. The most geography you can cover, so we could go anywhere we want. We fly all over the country picking up witnesses and perpetrators, like we could be anywhere. You sign out in the book, I'm going to New Jersey. I'm signing out in the book, I'm going upstate New York. And so we played hard for sure. But when that bell rang, man, these men and women rocked it, man. Didn't go home for days and days and days. Committed to it. John, one of the comments that we had with the U.S. healthcare homicide, CEO homicide, and Luigi was, I said, give me a sexy address and a sexy victim, and you'll get all the attention, all the resources you want in the world. We had kids killed in the 7-9. I couldn't get anything. The media didn't care. The job didn't care. The prosecutors didn't care. Like, I'm like, we got a great case. It's like, yeah, but this witness has been arrested 10 times for drugs. I was like, yeah, that's who you get at 4:00 in the morning on the 7-9. Like, you're not getting the, Father Flanagan. Like, and so when I think about the commitment of people, and this is a predominantly African-American community, Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, also, but more Caribbean, West Indian. 7-9 was more American. And like, we worked as hard for everybody. No matter who it was, everybody delivered the same level of effort on every single case. Those detectives did not decide, well, this is not important. We don't need resources. We don't need this. Like, we had a woman at the same time hitting the head with a brick in Manhattan, and she didn't even die. And it's a horrible case, and she got banged up. Like, they had more resources there than I ever had in 5 years in the 7-9 solving, 30 murders a year. You know what I mean? So I just am so enamored on how hard these people worked and how much they gave every day. They're truly humbling because there's a case, Ashley Sims, an 11-year-old girl killed in an arson fire, that I still talk to her mother today. And she actually reached out to me on LinkedIn, which is kind of crazy. I was friendly with her sister, Ashley's aunt, and that's who I liaisoned with the family through the case. And I said, Vinny D. Donato, shout out to Vinny D. Donato. I can tell you a funny story, Vinny D. Donato story. And so he's, I'm liaisoning with Carolyn, and I built this relationship. We had 3 trials, a mistrial, and an acquittal. It was heart-wrenching. I'm sick to this day over it. It was an arson for profit, homicide. 20 people got injured, people jumping out windows. It was 27 Brevoort Place in 7-9, August of 2001. And we put our heart and soul. One prosecutor, Kyle Reeves, said, I'll take the case. It's circumstantial. The rest of the bureau chiefs didn't want to do it. Anna Siga Nicolosi wrote Second Chair, who's now got the most popular true crime Anatomy of a Murder podcast. She's great. She was second chair on that. They put their heart and soul into that trial. I mean, it was like, this is what we're supposed to be doing here. And he was acquitted. They wound up winning a civil suit, and he was wealthy. He owned a bunch of buildings, and they've got a retainer and a hold on his assets, but I don't think they're ever going to collect. Anyway, so I was always friendly with Carolyn, and, holidays we would talk. And then one day the mother finally reaches out, and she comes out of her shell because she's traumatized. And she reached out, are you the Tom Joyce from the 7-9 precinct? And I said, yes. She goes, can I give you a call? And she reached out to me. She goes, I know you always liaison with Carolyn. I just want to thank you for everything. And I caught up with her. And now today I still have a conversation with her a couple times a year, see how she's doing, how they're doing. I mean, this is what these guys did. And I can tell you every single detective's got some story like that somewhere.
So, Tom, I love it. I love what you said about you're looking for character when you're looking for employees. You're not really necessarily looking for the resume, right? The resume may not carry over. So before we get into you going to cold case and all that stuff, what's your message to young guys and girls that join the police department, young guys and girls that are in the police department, either going the detective route, going the boss route? What's your message to them? Like, what was your ethos as a cop? Who was Tom Joyce? I went to work in the morning or in the evening. What were you doing when you were getting there? And what should people be? What should be their mindset going into the NYPD or law enforcement or any of that?
Yeah. All right. It's a great question, and I'm glad to give the opportunity to talk about that. When I retired, fast forward, jump ahead a little bit. The day I retired, I did not want to leave. I wanted to stay on the job. I was in cold case. It wasn't exciting. I have some interesting viewpoints of that. When I left the 7-9 to go to cold case, it was only because I was so burnt out that I needed a break from Comstat. I was going to Comstat every 28 days, getting hammered. That's a Vinny D. Donato story that I'm still going to tell. Vinny. What I realized when I got to cold case, I only needed a sabbatical. I was ready to go back. I just needed a breather. But you don't go back. Like, you don't go to cold case and say, all right, I'm ready to go back into the squad. Like, you just don't do that, right? So I transitioned to a very slower, more methodical, more predictable life at cold case, but it was still fascinating because the old cases were great, and I have great cases from there.
Where'd you get promoted out of? Did you get promoted out of 7-9 or cold case?
I was in 7-9. I got the money.
7-9.
I got the money out of 7-9, which is really funny because I had to call Espo as the chief of department for a blessing to say I want to leave the 7-9, and then he asked his guys, is like, hey, when did we promote Tommy? When did he get LDS? And he's like, he got it like 3 years ago. It's like, oh, okay, all right, he's done his time. And I was like, wait, you're not going to let me go to cold case because I got to do it after I get promoted? You got to do a certain amount of time? And it's like, yeah, I got the blessing from the Pope, So, but I went to there, and then 6 months later, I was like, man, I got to get back in the game. I was like, but okay, I'm here. I can ride this out. And I love it so much. I'm going to die in this chair. And then I went through a divorce, and the divorce was financially devastating. And so I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And I literally stumble again, timing again. I literally go to a trade show called International Association of Chiefs of Police, commonly known as IACP. And I was invited by my best friend to go there. And I only went because it was in Miami. I didn't even know what it was. And then I go on the trade show floor, and there's all of these vendors. And I start talking to a vendor, and I go, hey, LexisNexis, Accurate, we're using your product, and my squad is closing cases left and right in cold case. It's like shooting fish in a barrel, and I don't even want to tell the executives that it's this tool. They think we're the greatest cold case squad in the city, but they had just turned us on to public record searching. And so he's like, the guy said, well, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I was like, well, I don't know what you're talking. What do you mean? He goes, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I'm a freaking cold case squad commander in the NYPD, bro. Like, that's me. He's like, no, what if I give you a job? Because you just did a better job selling than any of my salespeople could ever do. I need an evangelist in my company to talk with your level of credibility. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. He's like, I'm offering you a job, stupid. And I'm like, how does that work? I don't know. And he goes, this is what you do. And you come here, you come work for me, and I do the numbers. And I'm like, how can I turn this down? I'll start collecting my pension, my 401, my overage. I got money in the bank. I'm doing all right. But again, I can't access it until I leave, right? And so, okay, go do it. And I'm just passionate about what I do. And I go around the country with the credibility of the NYPD. It's not Tommy Joyce. It's the NYPD. And we're no better than any other police department in the country, but we had the volume at the time. So the level of experience was just insane. I went to Chicago. I went to LA. These guys, like, they thought they were busy. They weren't busy, like, compared to our numbers. And so, but phenomenal investigators, detectives, supervisors, managers all across the country. I think there's two kinds. Some people I wonder, like, how do you catch anybody? And some I'm like, man, you guys are impressive. And that's, what you see. So to answer the question, John, what is my message? Is to this group of people on the job. They still have their time. They got to ride it out. They got to retire whenever they're ready to retire. It's a personal decision. Every single decision on when to go is personal. It's not like, oh, you got to go. Oh, you got to stay. It's very uniquely personal. But bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. You're super competent. You're super capable. You've been exposed and learned crazy things. You know how to handle crisis. You know how to handle pressure. These people, I went to the public sector. These people are stressing out over they lost some account. They're like, whoa, this account is $200,000 and they canceled on us. And they're freaking out. And I go, do you guys know, like, this is not a big deal, right? You know that, right? It's like, I got calls that our cops just got shot. Like, dude, like, this is not a fucking, I'm sorry, I don't want to drop that pulse. This is not a crisis. This is not a crisis. And then they're closing $1 million deals and they're smoking cigars and I go, this is nothing compared to putting down a case and getting the blue 5 on a homicide. Like, I'm sorry, you're $1 million, you're smoking, you're drinking the best bourbon, you're smoking fat Cuban cigars. It feels nothing like putting down a homicide. I'm telling you right now, guys. So your perception of what life is and what real life is and what really matters, you see it in police work. And I'm telling every kid, every cop, every adult, like the kids, and I say the kids, you know what I mean? If you learn and really focus and really become great at something, you have the passion, you have the desire, you have the support, you can do anything. And I used to say I was on the job with a tightrope, but I had a safety net. And then leaving the job, you have a tightrope with no safety net. The safety net is you. The safety net is you. Bet on yourself and do the work. Put the work in. You'll be great.
Tom, I love you saying that. I mean, the stuff that you're saying, bet on yourself. You're talking about becoming focused, right? Hyper vigilant, right? Really getting focused, become an expert in your field. And what you're saying rings true. And I hope that active guys have listened to this, because what you're saying is what John and I have been saying constantly. We fend phone calls, right? And John was saying earlier offline, like, it's amazing that we're not in the job anymore, because we constantly speak to cops as confidants, and we give them advice about CCRB, just the job of leadership in general. And I actually spoke to a lot of young sergeants. I said they learned a lot from this podcast to actually be a sergeant. But a lot of times we hear from people, well, what am I going to do after this job? And it's exactly that. You have so much skills that you learned. You learned how to handle stress. You've been pressure tested while you're with the NYPD. And all these skills transition to different facets after life, the NYPD. I love it. Now, I got to tell you this. I watched the ID channel. I used to watch. I was fascinated with it. I was always fascinated with cold case. And I think some of the stuff is obvious, but could you just tell us, maybe there's things we didn't think of. What are some of the things that make it difficult or different from investigating a cold case from something that is an active case, like the Luigi Mangione case? Obviously, the cold case, you might not have video from an old case or DNA, but if you could tell us some of the challenges of a cold case in comparison to an active live case.
Sure. Great question. So records retention, data gone, and then the quality of the case. So what we used to do, so I'll frame it up. I had the Bronx borough. We could have gone anywhere we wanted, but my focus was the Bronx. My office was in the Bronx. There was a lieutenant and a team in Queens and a lieutenant in Manhattan. There was 3 lieutenants, 1 captain, Butch Nisi at the time, another great friend, great former squad commander. We were peers. He was in the 8-1. I like to give these guys shout outs in case they're all listening. You know they are. Okay. So they if you're familiar with the old folders and the way they had all the information on the front of a folder, it was very easy to go into the records room at a precinct and triage a case and say, this is a case I want to get into. Now, the goal, not a quota, the goal, what we would expect from a cold case detective is you got to put down at least 2 cases a year, right? And so if you think there's 35 detectives in all of cold case in the NYPD, it's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. It's not moving the needle on crime suppression, crime reduction rates. It's a public relations home run. It's the message to the community. We will never give up. We will never forget you. I can't promise results. We can only promise effort, right? And so we would go into the records room. We would look for cases and we would ask the squad, is there any case you want us to work on that you can't get time to because you're still, dealing with the incomings? Sometimes they would hoard cases and say, no, you're on your own. Sometimes they'd say, yeah, this is a 3-year-old, 4-year-old case. Work it for me, please. Let me help with you when necessary. Some were great. Some were hoarding.
Tom, I don't want to cut you off, but are these cases that are still active, or are you going to old cases too? I worked on a case from 1927, and it was Judge I forgot his name now. He was abducted and killed and buried under the Coney Island boardwalk. We did that for fun, and that was the other thing. Butch Nisi says to me when we're reading the case, he's like, Tommy, you believe they're paying us to do this? We would do this for free, 1,000%. We knew we weren't going to solve it, but we were trying to find some clue that he was buried under the Coney Island boardwalk. Anyway, we had those cases to read and review, but that's not where we spent our time. The case that I'm most affectionate to is an Isidore Pack case. It was a 1971 robbery of a haberdashery in the Bronx. That Isidore Pack's family was constantly sending communications to the NYPD and the governor's office, and nobody paid them any mind. And that communication finally landed on my desk one day. And I said, come on, let's go get this case out of the 4-8. And we dug it up, brushed it off, and we solved it. So at the time, Ray Kelly at my retirement party noted that it was the oldest cold case put down at that time. They've since done older ones. And that's a tribute to Mark Tebbins, who was the detective on it. But going back to Eric's, how do we figure out these cases? So you read the folder and you can look and tell exactly what you want in terms of shooting, corner of, 4 o'clock in the morning. I know what this is, right? Inside, female, strangulation. I know what that is, right? You can tell, you can triage a case just by reading the cover. Okay, do I want to open it? Do I want to look into it? I open it up, I look. Do I see, do they have, any evidence stored? What's the vouchers look like? The DD5s, how much notation, how much meat is on this case? And can we breathe life back into it? And sometimes it was like, there's just nothing we can do. So I was saying that this is my leadership style in cold case squad. A certain detective, again, when I'm saying anything negative, I'm not going to use their names, but this detective who was never in a squad
came from narcotics and went straight to the cold case squad. They were like, hey, I heard this is a good gig. I go, as soon as you said gig, I know you're not cold case material. Like, as soon as I heard the word gig, you're out. But they pulled the nepotism hook. They got there. And this detective puts down 2 cases through a RICO by March or April. And then I look the next month and their feet are up on the desk for the next month. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, I got my 2. I go, no. This is how this works. That was for the firm. Now you're working for God. Remember Vernon Gebhart's message? We work for God. Start digging up those strangulation cases, inside cases, baby cases, women, the sympathetic victims. The drug dealers, like the Damien Hardy case, we put down 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 homicides on those on the RICOs because that's the only way you can do them because there's no cooperation at the state levels. And so the detectives, when they work closely with the feds and have a great relationship, they can do amazing things. But state level, but we got to get into these sympathetic victims, the women, the kids, the old ladies. You know what I mean? Like they're being home invaded. They're like, are you kidding me? We're not working on these. I called Vernon Gebhart the day I got to the Bronx Cold Case Squad. I said, hey, Vernon, has you got a case that's gnawing at you? He goes, yeah, page 110 on my Bible, my book, Practical Homicide Investigation. It's a kid who was killed in an abandoned house and he was spread eagle. He was assaulted and he was on a mattress. And I called the father up and I said, hey, we're picking up this case. We're going to start working on it. And the guy laced into me. He's like, screw you guys. And I was like, bro, sir, I'm sorry for your loss. I know it's been 20 something years, 30 years almost, but we're going to give it another shot. He's like, you seem to solve all the cop cases. Anytime a cop gets killed, you solve it in one day, but no one's ever done anything. He was hurt and he was not really yelling at me and us. I go, and you guys will appreciate this. I go and try to find that mattress. I look in the case. I find the mattress has been invoiced. I go to property clerk. It's the Great Fire of 92, the flood of 96. You know, I was like, so we were going to resubmit the mattress for biological evidence, but we couldn't find the mattress. So that case went nowhere. Everyone's gone. Everyone's disappeared. The one thing we were counting on is biological evidence. Couldn't do it. So Eric, again, to answer your question, it's just a matter of going through, reading them, and then having those instincts. The detectives knew what they were looking for when something had some meat on it. And then the key, Charlie Wells taught me this. When you empty a folder, don't overlook that matchbook cover, that napkin, that little Post-it note. There's a phone number on that Post-it note that doesn't even have a name on it. Call that number or go track it back and find who that number is. That's a freaking lead, bro. Buddy, and the case detectives who were that level of detailed oriented, those were the ones who were most successful. That they were not taking all the little scrap papers in there, little handwritten notes on the envelopes. Like everything is important. Somebody took enough time to write this down. It must have meant something. Follow it up. And then, John, you said it the other day, we got lucky with U.S. Healthcare and the phone call. I believe detectives make their own luck. I hated when detectives said, oh, we had nothing. And then that tip came in and they told you everything. It's like, that's because the detectives were off their ass and knocking on doors. And so when everything else is done, what do? Just go back out there and keep talking. There's a double homicide on the east side, the 2-5, I think. Jimmy West, if you're listening, shout out to you. Cold case guy followed up. I think he worked on it. Kid got thrown off of a roof, 101st Street or something like that. Mark Tebbins canvassed those buildings every single month for the 2 years I was in cold case. So that's making your own luck. And so when that tip comes in, when somebody's finally ready to talk, you got lucky. That guy called. He finally called. No, I worked it. I worked those doors every day, every month for 2 years. So that's kind of answer the full case.
I agree with you totally with that. I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, I had when early on, I had apprehended a couple of guys that were involved in different patterns: burglary pattern, grand larceny pattern, robbery pattern. And I said to a detective at the time, I think he's still on the job, Greg Siciliano, and I said to him, I just got lucky. He goes, no, you didn't just get lucky. You knew what it was. You knew what the information was. You were in the spot that the person would be. And then, yes, luck played a role. He's like, but if you would have just went out and drank coffee and not been looking in those spots, you would have never apprehended those guys. He's like, it wasn't just luck. I agree with. I wasn't knocking the detectives. I'm
No, I
knocking
know.
the message of the NYPD, which is gaslighting the public, which we've been hearing for a while, and I'm just disgusted with it. I'm just disgusted with this administration. So every time that they do something like that, I just point out, look what they're saying. It's not accurate. It's not accurate.
So
when they sorry, go.
No, the only thing I would say with investigations, it was very hard to decide what we wanted to release and what we didn't, because you could make a decision to release something and put something out there, and then it goes sideways. The worst thing, it wasn't ours, but the case that spells that out is the Boston bombing, and Ed Davis talks about. He's a friend, a former commissioner, and I did a podcast with him with Michelle McPhee and Mike King, and we talked about the Boston bombing and his decision of release the photos, not release the photos. Do we tell them we know? Or he struggled with that, and it's because you don't want to make the wrong decision. And something of that magnitude, the Boston bomb, the marathon bombing, versus our, homicides. I don't want to minimize our homicides, but you don't want to release and you don't want to make the wrong decision. So I understand there's a balance of what is the best choice that we can make. It's tough. That one's tough. That was tough.
Tom, I think it's fascinating when you speak about triaging cases, right? Because I always say, I used to teach my cops doing anti-crime work, that you have an eighth of a second to make an observation. So you pretty much would triage the people that we would actually make our observations. So I love how you say you triage the case. It's fascinating because the eye of a cop. It's so interesting the way you speak about these cases. And the way you speak about it, it's like you brought us back. It's almost like you're there right now. So these details, your ability to remember them is really impressive. I have to say. What cold case sticks out in your mind? What's the most significant to you case? And if you could go back and try to work on it, what case was that?
Yeah. So, Ashley Sims back in the 7-9 bothers me. In the 7-7, we put the case down. There's none open that still really linger. They all do, all the ones that remain open, but there's no one real emotional. We did make the arrest on the Ashley Sims case, but we didn't get the conviction. And I also learned from experienced detectives that a lot of detectives thought their job was done when the Blue 5 was submitted, and it's not. It's when the Supreme Court has finally exhausted all appeals on that case. That's when your job is done, because what the prosecutors, the DA's office was always afraid of. It's like, yeah, you guys are going to make an arrest and then you're going to disappear on me. And that's a fair argument. And I would say to them, well, we're juggling these cases. They don't keep coming. And you keep wanting my detective to come out and work on this case and work on this case. There was a balance there. But at the end of the day, the detectives needed to know that their job is done on that homicide case when the final appeal in Supreme Court has been rendered. And that's it. Done. So, Isidore Pact, we solved that case. It was a case dear to me because I got close. It's about the family. And so you can empathize with the victim and appreciate that this person was in a moment. They were terrorized. They were shot and killed in a robbery, and how that was. But when you hear the families say you never get true closure, right? You get a sense of relief that an arrest was made. You get some level of closure, but not full closure, because it can never bring the person back. And when you realize what we're in the power of doing and how we can affect people's lives, I saved some girl when I was a young cop in transit, some girl got her foot caught in an escalator at Park Place on the number 2 train. And so I was the first cop to respond. Her foot's caught. She lost half of her foot, but it was wedged in. I had to wait for ESU to come in and take her out. And I sat there with her and I let her draw pictures on the back of my memo pad. And that was what kept her calm until ESU came, and then she lost her foot. And she's like, I know I never talked to those people again, but her mother, what she said to me and the way she wouldn't let go of me when her daughter was finally getting in the ambulance, that's what you're doing in police work. You're getting all these bad guys and you're thinking drug dealer shoots drug dealer, and you're getting, oh, what do I care? I remember a detective saying, what do I care? Drug dealer shoots drug dealer, complainant doesn't care. No, because if he's spraying a street corner at 4:00 in the afternoon with an AK and the church lady gets hit, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And I had a church lady, Candace Oglesby, get shot and killed from a guy spraying a street corner. Like, those are why you work every single case all the time. And then you work as patrol, or no, you take bad people off the street, because maybe in that moment there's not a real victim, but they are victimizing the community every day, over and over. They are terrorizing that neighborhood over and over and over.
Tom, so, talk a lot about work ethic. Could you talk about, you had obviously some trying times on the job, right? You hit wrong doors. You went through a divorce. How do you stay positive? Are you a religious guy? How do you cope now with all of the death and tragedy that you've seen and all that?
It's a great question, John. My wife said to me, "How are you so normal?" I told you. I don't know. And I told you the baby cases did bother me, but you had to suck it up and had to go to work. Vincent Johnson was a serial killer. He did 2 girls in the 7-9. There were 2 girls in the 9-0. We had a serial case. He ultimately wound up being responsible for 7, I think. Shout out to Tony Vigiani and his crew. They did a phenomenal job on putting down that serial case, Vincent Johnson, the Brooklyn Strangler. The crime scene of Katrina Niles was one of the most horrific crime scenes I'd ever seen. He decapitated her almost to the point, blood everywhere. It was insane. It was insane. And like, you walk and you sit through there and you walk through this gore, and like, you walk out of there and you go, how could you possibly be normal after this? I can't explain it. I don't know. So I am not, I was raised Roman Catholic, went through all of the process until I didn't get married in a church to my first wife. I'm spiritual. I'm not as religious as I think I should be. I believe in God. I believe in a higher power, and I believe that God has a way for us all. I've talked often with my current wife and my son about getting back into the church, but I do that out of just having, a sense of life and a sense of purpose and why we're here and what we're all doing. I don't do it because I think I'm traumatic or troubled. I was like, my therapy is my cars. Like, it's 70 degrees in Virginia yesterday in February. I took my convertible out yesterday and I got road therapy, and I come back and I'm happy, and I don't, I don't kick the dogs ever either, because my dogs are my favorite people. But I just, you don't, like, it just doesn't bother me. And then the funny thing is, there's a quote in The Departed, when you guys did it, where it's not true quote from Freud, but they said that the Irish are the only ones that cannot be psychoanalyzed. It's like, that's me, even though it's not a true statement, but that's me. Like, I don't have any of this, like, traumas and trouble. And I know people who've committed suicide, and I know people that are going through depression, and I know all this stuff. And I can't explain why. It just doesn't bother me. Like, it doesn't affect me. And I'm super engaged with people. I have tons of friends. My Rolodexes, my business cards, my network is vast. So I'm not like an extrovert or anything. I'm not an introvert. I'm out there and I talk to people and I love people and I'm happy and life is great. And I have a better life than I deserve. But I don't know why this stuff has not affected me.
You deserve a good life. You worked hard at the NYPD. Your attitude is so positive about your experiences. And I love that you keep bringing up people in your career and you honor them. And I'm sure they honor you. And I know you have amazing stories. But I'd also like to have a little fun. You talk about your life right now. So tell us about Tom. What are some of your hobbies? What are things that you're into? Are you into movies? What do you do in your spare time? What keeps you busy? Tell us about Tom. Tell us about you off the job.
Yeah, so thanks, Eric. So food, travel, cars. I have a son from my second wife. She was late and she was almost 40 when she had our son. His name is Richard. We call him Dickie, named after his grandfather. I didn't expect to have another son. She was previously married but didn't have children, and I knew she would make a great mother. We made a decision. Funny enough, John, it was like, we're not going to do in vitro. We're going to put it in God's hands. If we are blessed with a child, we're blessed with a child. If we don't have one, we'll have a great life. I have 2 boys from the previous that Susan gets along great with. My sons, Tommy and Danny. Tommy, the Metro DC Metro police officer in the detective track there. I'd love to talk about the Summer of Love and that craziness and what that happened in DC was wild.
Your time. We love to hear it. Your time. Sure.
Yeah. My other son is in the intelligence community. We don't know who he works for, what he does. So they're both in the military. So Eric, shout out to you guys for military. They're 35 Foxtrot analysts, intelligence analysts. When they were picking an MOS, I thought that they would both transition to policemen. That's what they wanted to do. And it worked out well for Tommy. That's why he was able to get into the real-time crime center and into the detective track because of his intel. He served overseas for a year, putting intel packages together for Blackhawks. The other kid, I never thought he'd stay in the intel community, and he did, and I don't know what he does. So, but he's keeping the world safe. I trust that.
Sounds like CIA.
One of those. So anyway, we do a lot of cooking here. My wife when she moved to New York, we did long distance for a year, Virginia to New York. And then she moved to New York and she said, I'm not living in New York and not going to culinary school as a hobby, as a fun. And I like to eat. So this is going to work. And so she went to culinary school. Every Friday night, we would pick her up with my two boys in the back seat. And we'd drive into Manhattan and go to the French Culinary Institute, pick her up at 11 p.m. every Friday night for a year. And we would have the most decadent French food, eating out of to-go containers in the backseat of the car on the drive home from Manhattan it was wild. And so our prized possession, and we have two prized possessions in our house, is our stove, oven, range, and I have a Burkle meat slicer. And everything we do is around food and family and getting together and enjoying good food and good stuff. We live in wine country here in Virginia, so we hit a lot of the vineyards. It's an up and coming area, soon to challenge California, but I think they got a way to go. So we enjoyed that. We do a lot of traveling. We're going to Alaska this year. We're going to Vegas this year for shows. I mean, my whole thing is #making memories. If I took my kid to a baseball game, if I had season tickets, I took him to every single game. Like, all of those games blend into each other. But how do I make each event, each vacation, each thing we do unique so that my favorite saying that my kids ever said to me, and my young son now still says to me, Dad, remember when? Dad, remember when? That, I'm getting goosebumps right now. That is what motivates me. So we've got a weekend coming up here. We're going away for a couple of days. We try to get on the road and travel as much. We're not RVing. I'm not RVing, Eric. I'm not doing that.
You got to get into it.
I know. We have an RV park right here. So it's pretty fun. I go over there and we hang out with them and stuff. But I don't know that I've got it.
I might have to stop there.
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
A couple of cigars over there.
I'll send it to you. So, yeah, it's that. And as much as I have the cars, and I want to spend more time with the cars, I mean, I'm still working. I still have a great job. I travel for work. My son and all of his stuff and his sports and his activities, I don't have enough time to spend on the cars. But if I could, I'd be in that barn every day, taking the wheels off and putting them back on just for fun, God,
that's awesome, dude. Well, what's your favorite car?
So I'm a Mopar guy. I had a 67 GTX and a 70 GTX. I think the GM cars are easier to work on and the parts are more available. Probably a Buick Stage 1 GS 455, a 70 or 71 are also in my crosshairs. I am on Bring a Trailer every day. So anyone who knows what Bring a Trailer is, my wife hears the little notification bell from Bring a Trailer and she's like, stop. You're not buying anything else. Don't buy anything else. I was like, I'm just watching. So
you go to car shows?
Yeah, I do. I do the local ones here, and there's one big one here that's pretty good. But I got Meekum in my crosshairs. I want to get to a Meekum auction. And then there's Brothers has a muscle car thing out in Oregon that's invite by only. I'm trying to work some phone calls to get into that one. Yeah, I'm a muscle car guy, late 60s, early 70s until the smog motors came. So yeah, I just like And then I bought a 2019. This is what I did. So I bought a 2019 392 Scat Pack. It's got the shaker hood. I custom ordered it exactly the way I wanted. I brought my 5-year-old son with me. He's now 11 with me. He selected. I made him do all the selections. He signed the check for the down payment. We've saved all the documentation. We took photos. We're memorializing the whole thing. My dream to him, I told him, I want you, when you're a 45-year-old man, to show this car in a car show, and this is the car you bought with your dad 45 years ago. And it's 100% original, unmolested, never to be taken apart, never to be modified, never. We got the original floor mats, the original paper floor mats, everything original, nothing changes, with all the paperwork, all the documentation, all the service records. So, it's kind of weird.
I went to a car show. Right after I retired in Lake George, and I bought a 1984 Jeep Scrambler, and it was the 4-speed stick shift, and it could barely run. It was so rusted out, but guy was fixing it up, and I was like, I saw the car, and I told my wife, I said, you know what that is? She's like, what? I was like, that's an 84 Jeep Scrambler. There was only so many made that year, so I bought it. I actually it was quite interesting. I was up there, and I had an old Chrysler with me, and I traded the car. The guy actually had a used car dealership in Vermont, so I gave him my Chrysler, and I gave him $4,000 cash, and I left with the Jeep Scrambler, and I'm driving it, and it was like the windshield wiper was falling off. It was raining, and but I got it getting fixed right now, so I should have brought it to you.
Yeah. I can work on cars. You know what the problem is accumulating the tools again. That's the problem. It's not. I can't do body work, so I can do all the mechanicals. Fuel systems, ignition systems, suspension systems, all the repairs. I can't do body work. I'd have to send that out. But yeah, and if I could be doing anything, I'd be doing that. But I just don't have the time.
So Tom, you went through a lot of phases in policing, changes in New York City. You now are retired. I see you write a lot of articles. You've written a few articles. Wrote one recently about January 6th. You said you wanted to talk about Summer of Love, though. What do you want to bring up around that?
So when I was a cop, my mother would tell me how worried she was. I go, Mom, I got this. It's no big deal. I got it. And then she'd read the paper, and she's like, Bedford-Stuyvesant. Oh, is that you? Yeah, we're involved in that caper. We're involved in this caper. I worry about you. Mom, we got it. It's great. Everything's great. Don't worry about it. The second my son became a cop, I'm like, oh my God, I worry about you. I worry about you. Like I don't worry about me. I worry about my kid, right? So he gets on the job, and the one thing I told him, and Eric, I like the stuff that you message about. I told him your best tool in your tool belt is your brain. Know the law, know the policy. You know what you can do and what you can't do. And dude, no matter what you do, if you fell within those guidelines, they can't hurt you. They can't touch you.
Right.
And so 100% was one of the speeches. The second speech was, your job is to get home safe, unharmed, unhurt, and not to hurt anybody else. Oh, cops are brutal. Cops are this, cops are that. Let me tell you something. I put my hands on somebody, it's because they called that. They called that shot, not me. Not me. I never put my hands on anybody who was cooperative. And then once they're uncooperative, it's never pretty. It's never, ever been pretty. It's never been finesse. It's brutal. And if you don't like it, then you don't understand it. And you don't get the right to judge me when you've never done it. And everyone who's ever gone through a civilian academy always has a change of heart when they go through the trainings, because they shoot the innocent bystander. They get, their heart rate gets up, their emotions get up, their adrenaline gets up, and they go, no, now I understand it, right? So my son gets on the job, and he's having a good time, and he's enjoying it. He was one of those psych guys, by the way, on the NYPD. Put him on hold, holding pattern.
Red Cup? Red Cup? He had a beer in college?
So he played college football, Division I college football. And so I think he might have had a performance drug issue. I'm not 100% sure. He told me no. But that's the only other thing I could think of, and I wouldn't call it a red cup, but like
But it's okay if you rob people.
he's probably admitted to some drinking and stuff, you know.
Yeah. Or taking psych meds, John. You know, those people.
Yeah.
Or yeah, he's crazy. Take segment. That's fine.
Yeah. Exactly.
If you play sports, if you went to college, if you showed some character, maybe you even got into a fight. Maybe you got into a fight and now you're entering a career that more than likely you're going to have to fight every day. We don't want those people. We don't want those. We don't want you to take care of yourself. You work out. We don't want those people. No.
I mean, he graduated. He played college football and graduated on time. Not the best student in the world, but just put in the work, right? He
like most cops.
Yeah.
Wait, you tell me John Shell wasn't the best student? He's super intelligent.
None of us were, bro.
But I'm super proud of him because I know the college football. Like he played high school football. He was great. He played college football. He played above his head. I think he should have went to Division III and just rocked it. But he wanted to play at the highest level. He played at one, and the amount of work is a whole nother world. And so he told me he didn't enjoy any college at all until after the last season. He had 6 months of college after that. Everything was football. The food, the eating, the weight. He's 190 pounds now. He played at linebacker 230, right? And so really bad. And typical white guy, great on the run, slow against the pass, couldn't go into coverage, so never really great. But he was his coach, who's now Brendan Staley's a professional coach now, was his linebacker coach at JMU. He said to him, Tommy, he goes, no one ever works harder in practice than you. You made our team better because your practice squad until you finally got into the starting, and got on the field. He goes, your practice, like you worked and earned your way onto the field. And he got into like 4 or 5 games in his senior year. So now he's a cop now. He's a military veteran. He's going overseas. He's a cop there. And COVID hits. And I said, son, I had 9/11. I had the drug wars and the crack wars. Every cop has got their issue to bear, right? And you guys are going to get through it because if you find the people, surround yourself and support, you're there for the troops. You're there for each other, take care of each other. COVID, I can't make sense of it. I don't know what the hell's going on. And he's like, yeah. And then George Floyd hits. And the complete mockery of masks and the COVIDs and the lockdown. You can riot, but you can't go to church. And you're supposed to actually accept us, that we're believing this is real. It's so insulting. And so, but what I would say is, I think he still has a level of commitment to the job and determination, and he wants to do well, but those riots tore him apart. His partner is a female, half African-American, half Hispanic. She's a lesbian. He loves her. She just went to Harbor, and she was involved in the recovery of all the bodies in DC for the plane crash. She's the second female to pass the scuba in DC. No meritocracy, no DEI there, and it's meritocracy. Only a second female, and they've cycled a lot through there. You don't send somebody underwater that can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So she's part of that. She's a rock star. He loves her. They're committed. They're partners. These protesters are in her face, calling her a sellout, spitting at her. They don't even pay attention to my son, who's half Hispanic, half white, but they don't even he looks white, right? They're literally standing shoulder to shoulder and they're screaming at her nose to nose in her face. You effing this. I mean, the most vulgar and nasty things. And they just let it happen and let the city burn. And in Minneapolis, we know what happened there. And they're not just looking at their city, it's in DC. They're like, could this all happen in our city? What's going on in New York? All the vans bombed. And I think it took a toll, a lot more than these kids are letting on. You went through it, Eric. I mean, John, you guys, I can't even imagine the level of restraint that was needed.
I lost 20 vacation days.
I know, bro. I know. But, so I can only speak for him. He's the only person I've ever had in-depth conversations with about this stuff. It took a toll. think he's recovered. We talked about qualified immunity and all the laws that they had to retract, and council retracted. I told them qualified immunity and these laws, it's a non-starter. You leave. You got to go. So they finally pulled those back. So it's like, okay, got a breather. But man, they've destroyed these kids. They destroyed them. Committed, professional, compassionate people. They destroyed them.
Yes. So why do you, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that's important. No one wants to, we care about cops. I get all these people. I love cops. I care about their mental health. I'm like, all right, so then why don't you talk to them about why is it taboo for them to tell the truth about how they're feeling about things? Why, if they say something, if you care about their mental health, you'll actually want to know what's bothering them that's affecting their mental health. What do you think? Like, we're seeing, we actually, this is a New York podcast. We're all from the NYPD. We talk about the exodus in the NYPD, but it's not just in the NYPD. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere.
What do you think is behind the inability to recruit new talent, to retain talent, to keep people you have on? Like, what is behind this exodus that's occurring in law enforcement?
Yeah, I don't think it's any one thing. It's the cumulative, but the biggest lie, there's not a politician on either side. And I'm on an island too. I'm a social liberal, fiscal conservative, but I'm right of Genghis Khan on crime. Right. So who am I?
You're Tom Joyce. That's it.
Right. Exactly. I'm me, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I could vote for a Democrat if I like it. I like Tulsi Gabbard as the national director. Right. I'm not against RFK. I don't agree with everything he said. I thought that we talked about the new media, Matt Taibbi, Mike Schellenberger, and Barry Weiss, stone cold bleeding heart liberals. They're all like just talking common sense now. Like, so it's not about Democrat, Republican, liberal. Like, I hate the term, oh, these freaking liberals. No, these people are progressives and they're psychotic and they're crazy. My brother-in-law, who's a sweet, great guy, he's a total bleeding heart liberal, but he's going, Tommy, this is crazy. This is craziness. And so I'm kind of in that place, and I'm on my own island too. And so what I do know is cops are pawns, and both political parties have used them to their benefit, and they don't care a single thing about you. That's why I'm saying, back to the kids and the message, you've got a job, you can help people. There's no more noble profession. Take care of the job in front of you. Take care of the person in front of you. Solve their problem. Fix them. Help them. Do what you can. You're not going to fix the job. You're not going to fix the city. You're not going to fix the world.
Right. So, I mean, what Johnny asked, which I think is a great question, kind of overlapping on that, reflecting on it. What would be your advice to a young man then who says to you, hey, I'm interested in going to the NYPD. I just took the test. They just called me. Should I take the job? What to expect? Because how do you operate under this administration and with this legislation in comparison to when you got on the job? So what would be your advice to them? And because we always say the biggest recruitment tool is word of mouth. So would you advise someone to take the job? I mean, what would be your advice for what they're headed for and how to handle it?
Okay. Would I advise them if I knew them and I knew what they were made of and what their DNA was? I might or might not. I'm going to channel Wen Jianlu, who was shot and killed with Ramos in the execution in 7/9. When his family, being Chinese, said, you can't become a cop. We don't do that. And he goes, if I don't do it, who will? And so I've channeled him for a lot of these conversations recently. Because if we don't do it, if someone doesn't step up, what? No more? The troops are depleted and there's no more cops. They don't show up anymore. So what I'd like to see in a perfect world is people actually say, no, we have a crisis here. Stop right now. Let's put the adults in a room. Let's get some real leadership going here. Take care of these cops. They have the hardest job in the world with the least amount of support. That's got to get fixed and it's got to be turned around. So if a kid came up to me and said, I really want it, I always wanted to be a cop and I want to do it, I would guide them through what to expect and what not to expect. If not you, then who? I get it. I there's so many smart people that I work with that could have had massively successful careers, and they became cops. And like, what are you doing here? Like, but like, thank God you were here because you did a great job. And so I would still counsel a kid, young, thinking about coming on the job, to really dig deep and say, you know what you're getting into and you know what you're up against. And I do think, I always used to say, why are you leaving that unit? The lieutenant's going to move, the commanding officer is going to move. You just wait them out. They'll be gone. You know, I think that it will shift and it will change. And if there's, whether it be here, LA, Chicago, you know, it all comes from the politicians and who they put in and who they allow to run the departments. And thank God there's some still people who are still holding on and keeping some level of stability. I'm hoping, and protecting the troops, both here and in any other agency. But it's got to change, because you can't have this. You can't sit there with any level of common sense and say, I've watched 27 years of nationwide crime declines and it gets erased in 1 year and you can't get it back. And it is a big part of bail reform and releasing these guys and not prosecuting them. And you published the thing with drug, legalization and then not holding these guys accountable. The cops getting assaulted and nobody's getting prosecuted. Like, are you kidding? You're kidding, right? This is like, it's a bad dream that's got to stop. And so if they want to come on, I would say, hope for the best, expect the worst, but hope for the best, that things will change sooner than later, because this can't continue. If it's in you, you got to do it. Be smart. Listen to Eric. Know your law, your case law, your policy, your procedures, and your best tool is your brain, 100%.
So, Tom, we have a tradition every time we have a retired NYPD guy on here. We ask 2 questions. 1, we bring you back to your childhood. You're about to join the police department. Would you do it again? And then 2, we bring you back to your childhood, but you're alive now. Would you join now?
Yes, on the first one, 1,000%. Not even a question. The NYPD did amazing things for me. I was against the merge too. I liked my little world, but it opened up so many more opportunities for me. And again, I showed up. I gave them an honest day's work. I wasn't anywhere near the highest top performers. I just showed up and gave them an honest day's work, and things just fell into place for me. And the bosses, I never followed a boss, but bosses, when I got promoted to lieutenant, I got recruited. Hey, come to the 106, become my SOL. I was like, I already got something lined up. So it was, and then my post career, getting in front of cops with the technology, facial recognition, license plate readers, information data sharing, how to connect cases, how to talk about cases, how to help solve cases, generate leads, and all this stuff. The NYPD gave me a level of credibility that is, I've lived a very, very blessed life with what I was able to contribute and be a part of, and watch great men and women do great work, and then transition to what I look at is like, each one of those were transactional. Each one of my events in the police department were transactional. But now I'm part of a license plate reader company, and how to start doing data analytics on LPR data to identify patterns and how to locate individuals and how to do my contributions with another amount of team, like the engineers and the developers and all that kind of stuff, is magnitudes greater. There are thousands of cops right now, thousands and thousands of detectives who are using the tools that I helped be part of a team to get deployed into these agencies. And so my contribution, and I've hired probably no less than 20 or 30 cops or people, guys from the NYPD, guys from Jacksonville Sheriffs, guys from California DOJ. These were all people who worked with and worked for me. And we did this in facial recognition. Roger Rodriguez out of the facial identification unit in the NYPD came and worked for me. And he did the same thing in facial rec. I went to the Hill 50 times to convince legislators that LPR should not be abolished, Me personally, with Dick Durbin, Dianne Feinstein, and they were great. Like I was like, oh, I can't believe I got to go talk to this person. They were wonderful. I was like, wait, I see you on the news. You're not this person. Like, what's going on here? It's all an act. It's all an act. It's all theater. And so I'm sitting here going, well, we got to get this technology, and you cannot legislate this out. You're gonna get people killed. You're gonna get cops killed. You need it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Put guardrails up. We got to protect it. We got to legislate it. We got to put policy in place. But you cannot get rid of this technology. And they're like, "You're right, Tom. Thanks for coming. That's right. We're not going to sign off on this bill." And it's like, holy shit, 50 times. Roger sent to the same thing for facial rec. So our contributions in the greater good of the community, of law enforcement and people in the public, is like, I'm blessed to be a part of this with amazing people who are just committed, 1,000% committed to this mission and this profession and this vocation that we're all in. So what a blessing. So I would do it all over again. Would I do it now? I'd have to say I'm so strong on those feelings that I would say I'd have to say yes, I would do it again. Knowing what I know it would be a challenge, but I also know the deep connections.
Tom, you're our first one to say yes, you would take the job now. First one. No, I think it's yeah.
I didn't even want to be a cop growing up. I never thought of it. It was an accident, and I absolutely love it. I love what it's supposed to be, and I love everybody that I've ever met. And I am on a text thread with 9 detectives, sergeants. There's 9 of us that are all retired now left. We text each other every single day. Like these guys, I'm telling you, the ultimate compliment that any detective could ever say is, if I were the victim of a homicide, this is the guy or the girl, this is the team that I want work. These are those 9 people. Like if my wife had a liaison and work with detectives who need to solve my murder, like these are those guys. They are the salt of the earth. I'm telling you, we don't have to talk for weeks, months, years. Pick up the phone. I'm in Vegas. I'm in jail. Don't ask any questions. They're on the plane. So the collaborative group, the best people I've ever met. Not everyone's great. I get it. But you gravitate towards the ones who think and act like what your North Stars are. And those people have paid me over I could never repay them back for all they've given me. So I would have to say I'd do it over again.
Hey, Tom, before we're going on close to 2 hours, and I know you're showing some great stamina. I appreciate it. We're getting some great comments, and even my phone's blowing up. They love the interview. You're doing a hell of a job, and your positivity is just, it's radiant. We kid around, because a lot of people say, they tell me all the time, you were trying to negative. I'm like, all right, so here's a breath of fresh air. But there's great comments here, and there's a couple people asking if you could tell that Vinny story. So,
Vinny Dave.
So let's hear that story about Vinny.
So I want to talk about Comstat, and so the Vinny story is Vinny's the commanding officer of the 6-7 squad. I'm in the 7-9 squad. I have 0 Italian in me, but I grew up around him, so I tell everyone I absorbed it by osmosis. So I go to Comstat, and it's one of my early Comstats. I went to Comstat randomly as a sergeant because my lieutenant was a POS, and he used to always get sick for Comstat. And so occasionally I used to have to go and fill in for him. So I learned the Comstat process, and I learned how to get involved in it. So then my first Comstat, I'm literally going to Comstat 3 weeks into my first Comstat rotation. Louis Anemone and Eddie Norris is the Deputy Commissioner of Operations. Anemone's the Chief of the Department. Bill Ali is the Chief of Detectives. And I have 12 shootings and a homicide in the period. And I'm like, I'm going to get slaughtered here. But I will tell you, everyone used to ask me, how do you prepare for Comstat? I go, I don't prepare. And they're like, bullshit, Tommy, you do great at Comstat. You prepare. I go, I live the cases every day, dude. I don't need to study. I sit in my office. The detectives come in. They brief me. I read the 5s. I give them back to the detective. The sergeant gives directions. I'm up on top. I'm reading it. I know I don't have to study. So I go through 12 shootings and a homicide for the period at my first Comstat. And Eddie Norris says to me, Tommy, are you related to Vinny D. Donato? Because I'm doing the hands thing. I got the heavy Brooklyn accent. I got these guys over here, they're doing this thing and that thing, and I got this guy. So we brought him in. He's on parole. So we squeezed him and he gives it up and all this stuff. And they're like, are you related to Vinny D? So I go to the office. I call up Vinny D over. I go, hey, you got to hear this. You want to know? And he says to me, he goes, Tommy, you're in a 7-9 now? He goes, I'm in a 6-7. He goes, these fucking guys, they treat us like shit and they beat us up. They don't realize we're the Yankees. We're not the Mets. We're the Yankees. And I just never forgot that. I was like, the 7-9, we're the Yankees. All the other squads, they're the Mets, right? We're the Yankees.
Yeah, that's if you're a Yankee fan.
So Vinny D's brother's not a good. He's not a fan of mine. I pulled him over one time. He was pulling wheelies up in front. Vinny, you can ask him about me. We'll talk about it offline. But
well, I'll tell you a lesson I learned on the job is do not take anyone's suggestion about somebody. My own experience, I had to learn this. I didn't always do this. I make my own opinion about John and Eric as an example. I used to, he's a jerk off. Okay. And I treat him like, oh God, I feel so bad. The guy's awesome. Right. And then I'm like, oh, he's the best. He's the best. And I treat him like gold. I was like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, who said this guy? I said, I'll take it under advisement. I will make my own. I eventually learned to make my own decisions.
No, yeah.
So not everyone gets along. Not everyone sees eye to eye.
Chief Lukash had a question for you. Retired Chief Rob Lukash. He said, if you couldn't go in the squad, if we were told you're going to join the NYPD, but there's zero chance of you getting to the squad of the Detective Bureau, would you still take the job?
Good question.
That's a good question, Chief. Thank you.
Because I'll tell you right now, unless you know somebody, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
Really?
There's
That's
different
a great
standards
question.
today. There's different standards in the NYPD today. It's, and that's just what it is. The reality of it is hard work and competence isn't really rewarded today. And that's the truth of the matter. So it is a great question, Ro. It's a different department. It is.
Yeah. So
changes the game, huh?
This is another piece of advice for the young folks. Live deliberately. So what I would say is if I thought I was stuck in patrol for 20 years as a police officer, who I respect, Pete Fagosky, who was shot and killed, guy who was on patrol in 7.5 for 20 years. Like, I love those guys, but that's a special breed, right? And so, and the amount of experience and how great they are, I could never do that. I need to move. I need to change. I need different dynamics, different surroundings. I love dogs. I love canines. I mean, they're like my favorite. I love canines. I love dogs in general, but canines are so impressive. And Transit had a canine dog. His name was Larry. He was about 55-pound German Shepherd. And Jimmy O'Hagan was the handler. And Larry used to hump my leg on patrol in Transit. And he's like, Tommy, it's the weirdest thing. He goes, he doesn't do that to anybody else. I was like, I love dogs. They love me. I don't know what to tell you. So I would like to look for a specialized unit. Like I would like canine. I would definitely like to do, I'm not an ESU tactical guy. Definitely not that route. So I would find a contributing role. And let me tell you about how I feel about people going inside to details and stuff. The job needs them and it's great. All that I ever asked is if that's where you want to find yourself, when I need you, when we're in the squad, when we're on patrol, when we're out, like just help me when I need help. That's all we have. I'm glad you're there. It works for you. Fantastic. Make a great life out of it. Knock it out. But when I call you up and I say, I walk up to the photo unit, right? And I go, hey, this is before the PIMS, the digital. I go, I need these. Here's a UF, whatever it was, for request for photos of this suspect. And the guy takes the photos and he looks at it. He goes, you need 10 copies? I go, yeah. He goes, oh. I go, you got one job. You have one job is to print photos. And I come in here and ask you to print photos and you're like, give me shit. Like, dude, do me a favor. Just go home. Just go home. You got one job. Print photos. I ask for photos and you like get upset. And so
at least somebody was there. I mean, that was a start, because today, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe nail somewhere. I know that she's in with the Chief. Sorry. She's in with the Chief. She's making overtime. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm the LP slip right now.
So I think I would probably do my patrol, make my bones, figure out when I had enough experience. Whereas the program, I know you guys talked about the 5-year thing. I mean, the rules are what they are. I don't even think a human being should be a cop before 25. Now, in what I know now, right? I talked about that, but but
It's
your
true,
body,
though.
it's a young
I was
man's job.
pretty dumb before 25. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's a young man's job, but your brains are more suited for police work much later, just like parenting, right? I'm a much better parent now in my 50s than I was in my 20s, but my body is not really digging the whole running around playing soccer thing, And the same thing, I'm not going to be running around out there, but man, I would be such a better, smarter, wiser cop. So I think there's this place you got to find that sweet spot. I would do it, and then I would probably look for something that really enticed me and got me going, and something that I could do really great. The promotion video that James Earl Jones used to narrate, and then he used to show the thing, and then he used to have that crescendo music and the drums, and then Gloria Estefan had the speaker thing, and what was it, Goal or Reach? It was the Olympic song at one point. Like those two videos, I'm getting goosebumps again. Like I would go to promotion ceremonies and it would make me well up, because like our freaking people are jumping and rappelling off of roofs, and they're fucking going into the boats in the ocean and the rivers and digging out bodies, and they're booming doors and going through high threat entries, and like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And these are the most admirable people who are willing to do all this stuff. And so, yeah, I want to be a part of that again. I would definitely want to be.
I love hearing you speak about it, right? Being a part of something, that's why it's important to have, religion in your life, or to be part of an organization. It's important to be part of something, right? To be part of a team. That's the camaraderie. That's the morale. And unfortunately, the morale that we see is at an all-time low. So for the people that are there right now, and they have to stick it out maybe another 10 years, any advice on how they can build camaraderie, get that morale better? Because the internal pressures of the NYPD right now are so vast and so egregious that, John and I both say it, that that's the biggest contributing factor to the mental health epidemic in law enforcement, especially the NYPD, in comparison to the external pressures. So what do you say to the guys that are there right now that say, you know what, I can't do 20 years no more, right? We say it's 10 and out. So what are your advice to them to bring up morale and have camaraderie? Should they stay? Should they go? I mean, I assume you would say stay, because I know your love and passion say you'd be willing to take the job. But what would you say to them?
Well, I told my son, I was like, if you want to leave, let's talk about what that looks like. But you're not just quitting because you want to wake up one day and quit. So that's not happening. So let's talk about that. We'll go through it. Let's go through the process. Let's break it down, right? And then, so what do you need emotionally, personally, financially? Where are you going to live? What are you going to do? All that stuff. So they really got to take that nuanced look at themselves and where they're at in their world. If they're married, if they have kids, all of this plays into it. What I would say is, do you remember the scene in Black Hawk Down where one of the soldiers leans to the others and they're complaining about getting into this useless war and it's stupid, and there's like, dude, I don't care about that. I'm just here right now and I'm taking care of you and you're taking care of me. That's the only thing I know. So we're here. We're not leaving. This is what we're doing. And I'm paraphrasing. I got the messages right. The words are wrong. And I don't understand how cops can't be really tight with each other when you're on patrol, because anything can happen anywhere, anytime. And if you need somebody to come and save your ass, like, I'm counting on you. You're counting on me. I'm going to be the best I can and the most responsive I can for you, and be there for you and you me. So how you're doing this without having strong camaraderie, I can't speak to it because I'm not in that game and have that front row seat anymore. But it shocks me to think about it. And then I talked to my son, and I was like, he's like, yeah, we got a good group. He goes, but what we don't do is socialize off the job as much as you guys did. My worst mistake was allowing my son to hear those 9 guys on my text thread, all the stories, because he's like romanticized. I was like, that's what I want to do. I was like, I never should have exposed him to that, because now we can't get it out, right? And so what he tells me is like, we didn't socialize. We don't currently in DC socialize as much, but on the job, I definitely have some tight friends that we count on each other. And there's a couple of social events that we do, but nothing like you guys did. And I was like, all right, well, that's cool. And then again, head down, most noble profession in the world. Help. I mean, you took the job to help people. If you took it for money, you took it for benefits, like then you can leave, because who wants you anyway? Like, you're not doing the job. So that's okay. And they talk about the most diverse police department. Okay, that's great. That's fantastic. You know what? I liked a kid coming from India or China, like Wen Jinlu. Wen Jinlu is like, no, if not me, then who? I like him. The white kid from Long Island is like, yeah, I'm going to screw the job and get everything I can out of them. And like, I don't want you. I definitely don't want you. And so my buddy, another first grader, Chris Scandol, shout out, 7-9 squad, homicide, Brooklyn North homicide. He always used to say to me all the time, he's like, just don't be an asshole, right? That's the only criteria you got. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you look like. If you're an asshole, you're out. And then a buddy of mine, John Amadeo, used to say all the time, oh, this guy, Eric Din, right? Good guy, good cop. You better say both. Good guy and good cop. He's a good guy. Oh, okay. Not said, not a good cop. Oh, good cop. Oh, he's an asshole? Oh, okay. Good guy, good cop. That was like the quick evaluation. Good guy, good cop. Good guy, good cop. Good guy, good cop. So I just want to be surrounded by good guys, good cops. And if you do that, the job will be great for you, because you don't care about what's going on anywhere else. You just care about your little world on patrol in that sector at that moment. Precinct commander, hopefully they're taking care of you. Lieutenants, the sergeants, you got good bosses. Your world is tiny compared to the bigger thing. Don't get distracted by that stuff. That'll sort itself out. But you got to go home every day in one piece, unhurt. Don't hurt anybody.
That's great advice, man. You want to change the world, change your environment that you're in, your immediate, what you could change, right? Take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of the people closest to you. Great advice. Tom,
Yeah.
we kept you for 2 hours, over 2 hours.
We're rocking.
Start to wrap this up. We'd love to have you back on. Come on, maybe, give us some analysis or some stuff.
Do another 2.
I think he could. I think he could. He could go another 4 right now.
He's got the stamina.
We're not even close, guys. We're not even close. Let me do this though. Let me do 9/11. So real quick.
Sure. I thought we were keeping you. Sure. Let's go.
Listen, Tom, we could have you and Ron Layson on together. We could do a 24-hour marathon. It'd be
Ron won't let Tom talk though, so we can't.
Yeah. The chief had to shut Ron down yesterday. It was hilarious. It's like, hey, you want to come up for air a little bit over? So I was telling you that I felt we got the reorganization of the 7-9 squad from all of 99 into 2000. I thought it would take about a year. It took almost 2 years to really get it humming the way we wanted. And remember, I told you that they had 9 squad commanders in 9 previous years, including Bobby Boyce, who's a great friend of mine, chief of detectives, a mentor to me, phenomenal. He left because he got promoted. He got promoted to captain. I backfilled him. He's the guy who handed me the keys to the 7-9 squad. And so some left of their own, some left for promotions, whatever. But everyone will tell you that 7-9 was a beast. And I'm sitting there going, I'm here, guys. And they're like, oh, you'll be out of here in a year like everybody else. And I'm like, I got nothing else to go to. I got nothing. So I don't know. So I go to 7-9. It takes 2 years. We pass a quality assurance inspection. This is how it goes. Richie Johnson, the sergeant, quality assurance comes in. They go, give me these 10 cases. We want to look at them to see that all the proper protocols have been done. Richie hands him 10 cases. He goes, these aren't the 10 cases I asked for. And Richie goes, these are the 10 cases you're getting. This is the 7-9. We're just happy people show up here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was kind of like that. And I was like, and then I pulled the quality assurance sergeant aside and I go, look, here's the deal. This place was a disaster for decades. No quality assurance inspection ever. It's taking us time to get through this and to build this up. We eventually, I want to say in 2002, we eventually passed like a legitimate quality assurance inspection, but it took almost 3 years to get it done. It was tough.
Ahead of time. Did you pass that one at least?
What's that?
Did you pass that one with your strategy to?
Oh yeah, of course. Because he told him, he's like, we're not giving you any other cases, and the guy's like, I just don't want to get into the conflict, you know?
Yeah.
Agree with the chief, Bobby Boyce, PC, great choice. So we finally got it where we want. Again, I'm looking at to see who the the talent pool is coming out of narcotics. I got a talent pool coming out of from the squad. I'm the precinct commander. I don't want to mention his name. He went through some stuff. He's a wonderful guy and a great guy and a really close friend, but the job screwed him big time. And it's his story to tell, so I don't want to bring it up. But he's a wonderful, wonderful man and a great commander, a true cop's cop. And I would work with him and say, who are your best guys? Who are we working with? And we'd make sure that the workers and the talent came up. And it was great. And we got the place humming. And I would say by September 10th, 2001, everything was great. And then 9/11 hits the next morning. So we're out on a homicide apprehension attempt on the morning of 9/11. We hit a bunch of doors. We're looking for a kid named Powerful. Can't find him. Struck out multiple locations. We go to breakfast at Tom's Diner in the 7-7 on Washington Avenue. And we hear Matty Collins, another great first grader, shout out, one of my text threaders. He's said, "You hear that? We hear the bomb. We hear the planes hit, but we didn't know what it was. We thought it was a truck backfire." So then we're paying our check at the front at the diner, and someone comes running in and says, "Plane just hit the World Trade Center." I'm like, that's happened before. A couple planes have hit, these small prop jets or whatever the hell they are, and then Corey Lytle wound up hitting a couple months later, that craziness, the Yankee. So it's like, it's not unheard of. But then by the time we got outside, someone said 2 planes. So we knew exactly what that was. And then we went to the top of 256 Clausen, I think it is, in the 8-8. We went to the rooftop up there and we could see everything happening. And then we put ourselves into the queue. And I had been at the 93 bombing of the World Trade Center, and you couldn't get anywhere near there. So unless we were willing to run for 2 miles, I knew we couldn't drive in, right? So I was like, listen, let's just put ourselves over the air. I got 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, 5 detectives. We're available. What do you need us to do? And, everything happened. Everyone knows what happened that day. We don't need to redo it. I was part of the evacuation of everyone coming over the bridges and getting everybody onto planes and buses, trains and buses and stuff like that. But only in the 7-9 could we get a live homicide at 11 o'clock at night. Henryk Siwiak, Mike Prate, who put down the CMB guys with his federal partners. Also, he didn't respond to that homicide, but he worked that homicide for many years after. He was shot and killed in a robbery in the confines of 7-9 at 4 Decatur Street. And we worked that case forever. So it's the only homicide on 9/11 in addition to the World Trade Center incident. So we worked that case for a long time. It's still unsolved, but I think Mike has a good handle on it. He's retired, handed that on. I think there's some meat to it. We recreated the neighborhood through old data, some really sophisticated data queries and stuff. It's a lot of fun to really dig into that stuff, but I don't know that it will ever get solved. Someone's got to talk, but that could happen. So 9/11 was crazy. And I was a lieutenant who, when they activated the landfill in Staten Island, I went the very first day. I was assigned. I had a team. I had 1 lieutenant, a couple, 2, 3 sergeants, and 20 or 30, and an FBI agent. And it was a 10-story pile height of debris. And their job was, they said, your job is to go through that pile and move that pile from A to B and try to go through everything as best as you can. We had a heavy equipment operator and all that kind of stuff. And I was at the dump the very first day. Obviously that, never forget it, for all its reasons for that. Everyone's got a 9/11 story. I'm not going to tell you anything different or interesting other than that. I got some side stories about my sergeant finding a Kansas City Chiefs football. And so he sent, Mike Mayer sent the football to the Kansas City football Chiefs. And Dick Vermeil was the head coach at the time. And he said this was found in the debris of the World Trade Center, and just letting you know that there might be a Kansas City Chiefs fan who perished in 9/11. And they do a whole news story, and they interview Mike, and they invite him to the New York Jets game. The job tried to jam him up.
Wow. No surprise.
What'd they say? He was taking gratuities for what would they got?
I got Matty Collins, the doc, shout out, one of my other first graders, one top shelf. He got nicknamed the doc because when he slept in the dorms, he used to wear scrubs. We're like, what do you think? You're a doctor or some shit? So another great detective, Brooklyn North Homicide. These guys are the salt of the earth, guys. I can't say enough about them.
That's what I miss about the job. That part, right? The people. That's the good people. That's the part we all miss. That's what makes us love the job.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys like John Garrity and Chief Mike Marino in the 7-7 when I was on the platoon. Mike was the XO, John was the ICO. These guys were out doing guns. I mean, these guys are all on our text. Kevin Slegg, George Farback in the 7-9 squad. Like, we needed stuff to happen, and they just got it done. They were magical. And then Seamus McHugh was a sergeant that worked for me, went on to Brooklyn North Homicide and other big things. I mean, these guys are just so good at what they do. And I would never say anybody is the best. Like Mark Tebbins up in the Bronx, cold case, not my Brooklyn crew, but man, that guy was so impressive. So what I always say is, like, there's nobody who was the best. I was just surrounded and watched and learned from so much talent. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling how much talent there is out there. So, with that, we can start winding down. I got so many funny stories about.
Sure, you got another hour or two?
I can keep going. I can keep going. I mean, the stories are just endless, and then the stories I can't tell, because it was just wild. But I will tell you, funny story is we have this. Chris Scandol catches a double homicide. It's a shooting in a drug spot, and we catch the guy who's the driver and the lookout. And his nickname is Playa. His name is Henry Matthews. And so we're convincing him that he's not culpable for this murder. So he thinks he's cooperating, but he's not responsible, but he's felony murder for the robbery. And so we had some lackadaisical. I know what happened, but there's no need to talk about it. But someone was very lackadaisical, and they didn't lock the interview door room. And so while we were waiting overnight for the writing ADA to come and interview him and get him on tape for his statement, the door didn't get locked. And he was like pissed off. He was like, I'm waiting here all this time. And these guys, he literally walked out of the interview room. It's like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, walks downstairs, stands in front of the 7-9 for 15 minutes on a payphone calling for a cab, and then gets and puts himself into a rehab. So we can't find him, right? So this is now technically an escaped prisoner.
Not technically.
Well, if we hadn't fingerprinted him yet, it would have been fine. But he had just got his fingerprints rolled. So once we did that, it was over. So it's like, okay. So we're running on an escaped prisoner case, and Chief Joe Espo calls me. And he's like, hey, Tommy, how are you? And I'm like, hey, Chief. He's like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, we're hunting Henry Matthews Playa, and this is what we're doing. He's like, yeah, tell me all about that. And he's like going, and he's like really calm. And I'm like, and then in a second, let me tell you, screams at the top of his lungs, you don't have one mother effing thing to do in your entire effing life until you catch this mother effer. Is that understood, Tommy Joyce? I said, yeah, Chief. And before I could even say Chief, fucking slammed the phone down. I was like, bro, holy cow. Man, we are in the shitter, guys. And so I'm like, holy cow. It took us 7 days to find him. We finally tracked him into 7 days of hell, bro. And he was in the drug rehab. But here's the lesson I learned. Every tip that we initiated turned out to be false. Every tip that came in on its own had some level of credibility to it. So in other words, we arrested somebody. We brought him in. We debriefed him. Give us some information. Where's Playa? Where's Playa? Where's Playa? And I think he was here. Then we go follow that lead. The after action review on that caper, on the interview process and the investigation on every single lead that we generated, initiated, turned out to be bullshit. Every single one that came organically from the field turned out to be viable. So that was fun. I had Mike Tyson as a suspect in the Sugar Hill Club. He beats the balls off of some other boxer and tears his mink coat up, and the guy wants retribution. So Mike Tyson's now a suspect in an assault case for me. And so, like, that's like I'm dealing with murders and shootings and all stuff, and I need this Mike Tyson sensational. So the headquarters is on me. What's going on? What's going on? It's like a pain in the neck. I got that. Then the lawyer's calling me every day. He's like, Tommy, what are we doing here? Are we arresting Mr. Tyson? And I was like, dude, let me explain something. This is the 7-9. There's not a detective in this office that wants this case. And we don't want to do a fucking perp walk with Mike Tyson. That's not who these people are here. This is our worst nightmare that this case come here. So if he's guilty, if we've got enough evidence to make an arrest, I'll call you. I'll let you know. But we're not going to sandbag the guy. That's the bottom line. So he's like, no, I really appreciate that. So we call up and we said, look, we got one witness. The ADA won't thing. It's a fight. None of the other witnesses who all saw it go down. Nobody's going to say a word. We got no leverage against them. The shit ain't happening. We're not going to make an arrest. I call up the headquarters, chief of DA. I say, we're not going to make an arrest. They're like, that's what you got. That's all you got. DA's declining to prosecute. They're not. If you put it through, they're not going to prosecute. That's fine. I call up the lawyer. Statute of limitations are up on this, right? So I call the lawyer. I go, we're not making an arrest, so we're good. He goes, all right. Next thing I know, I got an autographed boxing glove of Mike Tyson. To Tom Joyce, thanks for everything, Mike Tyson.
That's awesome. I love Mike. Listen, Tom, 2 hours and 20 minutes. We're almost done, but I want you to finish with this because this case was so prolific. Jessica Tisch, the new police commissioner, spoke about Luigi Mangione case, talking about perp walks. When you saw that perp walk with Louis Mangione, I see you shaking your head already. I love it. Tell us your thoughts. What were you thinking? What came to mind?
We didn't even like most, not all. We didn't even like perp walks at all, period. And they're so phony and they're so staged. So even with walking out with your shield out, and you never wear your shield out, ever. Like there's none of this Sipowicz stuff. But all of a sudden you're walking out and you got your shield hanging. Like, when does that happen? How does that happen? Right? I do a press conference. I have 2 capers back to back. I briefed Mayor Giuliani on 2 different capers back to back in 2 days. The only time I ever met him, Dunn was the first step. Carrick was the police commissioner. He was on vacation. They do 2 press conferences 2 days in a row. And I'm standing on the press conference and Dunn's going, get in here. And I'm like, and I'm creeping away. And he's going, get in here. And I go, Chief, Commissioner, it's okay. He's like, get in the fucking press conference. And I'm like, it's not really my thing. Like, come on. He's like, get in here. I'm ordering you, standing here. And so I don't like any of that stuff. I learned very early, success stories. Do not tell success stories at CompStat. You're opening up a can of worms. Do not draw attention to yourself. Walkouts, perps, press conferences. I don't want anyone not even knowing I'm there. That thing is crazy. That thing is crazy. That thing is crazy. My day, that guy, that kid, 2 detectives in a rental car from narcotics go and drive to Pennsylvania and come back with that guy.
What do you think about the mayor was there? Would you ever see anything like that? Did mayor ever show up to any purple walk?
Never saw anything like that. The truth is crazier than, the reality is crazier than fiction, right? You could never even said, well, let's have the mayor do the perp walk and do the apprehension and go through the extradition. You couldn't even say, no one would ever believe that. Like, the mayor's not going to do that. And it happens in real life.
That's great. All right, Tom, listen, why don't we start to wrap this up and then give us anything you want, like whatever you want to talk about before we go. And then, like we said, we'd love to have you back on. I know you got some stories, and we constantly bring guests back on for, talk about issues, any analysis. So, what do you got for us? Like, what do you want to end around?
Just again, back to the same thing. I mean, I'm a fan of the show for a very strong reason. I am leaving mainstream media. I am going to new media, long formats, because when I want to dig in on a topic, that's the only place you're going to get it. Sound bites are horrible and they're of no value to anybody. So I will say that I don't agree with everything you guys have said and done. Like, there's difference of opinions. You guys even go back at it. However, if the media was doing their job and holding, because they're the true middle of, like, one side does one thing, one side does the other, who's accountable, who's not, who's doing it. If they did their job, there would be no opportunity for new media. And if they're not going to do it, the beautiful thing is, like Tucker Carlson, Meg, what's her name?
Kelly.
Megyn Kelly. All of these people have all branched out. Schellenberger, Barry Weiss, and Mac Taibbi, again, left-sided, coming out. They would have no platform if the media did their job. And so what a beautiful time. Whether you agree with the finest unfiltered or not, it doesn't matter. But what a beautiful time to say, I've got a microphone and I've got an opinion and I can tell the masses. And if you want to listen to me, you listen to me. If you don't want to listen, scroll by. And so I don't agree with everything. I love you guys. I'm impressed with your ability to draw the audience and talk about topics that are fantastic. I agree with a lot, but the fact that you can do it and tell the truth and stay. I mean, the stuff that you guys went through, I don't have to do it. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. I think it's unbelievable. And I'm sorry that you guys went through it. It's terrible. It never should have happened to anybody. You got to tell your story, man, and you got to do it. And I think the benefits long-term will prove themselves out, right? Because who's the watchdog? Who's the true watchdog? Who's holding accountable? It used to be mainstream media. Now it's long-form new media podcast. So with that, I wish you guys well, all the best.
Thank you.
Tom, man, I had such a good time. I am definitely hitting a super chat tomorrow. Like, no doubt about it.
Tom, thank you so much all the time for coffee and donuts, hitting the super chats. We really appreciate it. And I'm glad that you had the guts and you're honest to say that. That's why I know you're a good man, because you didn't say, you know what, John, Eric, I love you guys. Everything you say is great. That would be a lie. That'd be a lie. If you think that everything we said is right, and the fact that you were willing to say that, hey, I like most of the stuff that you say, some stuff I don't agree with, that's what we want. We want honesty, and that's how we have real conversations. So you know what? Yesterday we had the executive perspective, right? We have Rob Lukash and we have Ron Layson giving their perspective. We would love to have you here on any time. If we need an investigative perspective, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, there's a lot of again, there's 100, there's so many. I mean, I'm happy to help because I believe in your product. And if I can lift and elevate your game, then I'm good. I for me, this is the stuff that I love to do. And I'm what I'm married to in terms of where my head is at and the things that drive me. My LinkedIn profile, if you follow me, I try to stay away from the politics and anything, unless it's related to public safety, the cops, keeping the community safe. Like if you follow 99% of my commentary, and I'm very prolific on LinkedIn, if you follow all that, it all is about cops, safety, community safety, crimes, allowing kids to run around, this deportations, the immigration stuff. Like communities need to be safe. If you're not safe, you're nothing. So what are we doing? So that's why if I can contribute to that part of this product for you guys, I'm happy to elevate that game and do the best I can at it.
No, we appreciate it. Yeah, we got about 800 people with us all day. And, there'll be a few thousand that watch this today, and then it'll continue to grow in the time. But for anybody that's watching or listen, if you look in the links, you'll see Tom Joyce's LinkedIn if you want to reach out to him to find out where his OnlyFans page is, because I didn't think it was appropriate to put it on but no, his LinkedIn's there if you want to check out Tom Joyce, if you want to contact him. I actually do follow him on LinkedIn. I've actually started to become more active on LinkedIn as well, but I am very political. So but yeah, no, listen, I appreciate it. And like I said, I think me and Eric are like, we just want to hear the other side. That's it. Like we want to hear opinions. We want to hear people that agree with us. We want to hear people that don't agree with us. So we appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate you spending all this time with us. I mean, 2.5 hours, I know we kind of ate up your entire day, but yeah, we'd love to have you back on. And before we wrap up, any final words, anything you want to get out there?
No, I'm good. Everyone be safe. I hope everyone, right, finishes their careers wherever they want it to be. Get home safe. Take care of family. # making memories. It's all about making memories.
Tom, get something. It's been 2.5 hours. Get something to eat. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Finest Unfiltered. We'll be back at you tomorrow, 0805, people.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
During
enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.